Oh, that's funky.
Welcome to Who Do You Think You Are? Yep.
Episode 17.
Episode 17.
Oh, I got the pitch bend on that one.
Yeah. Dog it. I didn't say hey Pedro in that
No, you
beginning.
didn't.
I really fucked up.
It's okay.
You want to start over?
I really do.
Rewind.
Yeah, okay, rewind. Doo-doo. Hey Pedro.
Hey, Nick.
Episode 17.
Yeah.
Thanks for tuning in to Who Do You Think You
Who
Are?
the fuck do you think you are?
Let's get
Today's
right-
guest,
Yeah, today's guest,
good friend, Jesse.
human.
Jesse Braddah Cuz.
What's up, Uncle Braddah Pedro?
Possible reptilian in studio.
Yeah,
Possible.
possible.
Oh, where should we start? You're from Hawaii.
From
You just
Hawaii,
moved
born and
here.
raised, yep.
Moved here recently. A couple episodes ago, I found this statistic of the lifespan of people in Hawaii. They live the longest.
Really?
It's like it's minuscule. It's like 6 to 7 more years, but it's still they're the top.
In like the ghetto parts of Hawaii, or in like?
I guess just as the average, right? Yeah, right. Like who is this?
I know a lot of like really obese people that I've observed over the years.
Right.
In the impoverished parts of Hawaii that tend to have lower life expectancy and higher diabetic rates.
Lots of
Diabetic
the diet, right? It's like the rice and
For sure.
spam is super.
Yeah.
I guess
Super good for you.
guess like China's like that too, actually, where they have so many like sugar problems from rice, like where they're not only overly I can't think of obese, but actually you could still have that same. It's kind of strange how it can affect people so much differently, and we just kind of you look at rice almost like it's a healthy thing. I think I was doing that for a long time, being like, oh, that's just a grain, but then you realize it's all just being processed into sugar.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a whole nother subject. That right there.
It totally is.
But
Diets.
yeah, we eat a ton of rice, tons of pork, tons spam. We love it. But yeah, it seems like China, there's this it's a bigger separation between wealth and poverty, and you find that a lot of the indigenous Hawaiian people, they're getting pushed further into poverty, while the foreign wealth comes into the island. And yeah, you find ways to make cheap food taste really, really good, and
Yeah.
you get addicted, and that's what happens.
Yeah.
And diabetes.
Diabetes. That's almost kind of a thing that's happening everywhere in a way, where it's like the wealth seems like it's kind of pushing the poor down, and then they're
Yeah.
finding different ways to deal. Could be the new world order. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows? But then you find out that ramen tastes fantastic every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
And
Throw an egg on there.
And
Yeah.
spam actually is pretty good too.
Oh, it's delicious, man.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. It's like a lot of things that you probably shouldn't eat, a lot of things that you probably shouldn't do. Those are the things that are the most interesting and most entertaining, and that's how it
That
is.
tastes fucking good, man.
There was this restaurant I worked at. We did these little like pretzel slider rolls with deep fried spam, then sriracha aioli, and this like cranberry slaw. And it was pretty
That
bomb.
sounds yummy.
Yeah.
But it's like you can make like you said, you can make anything that's even kind of cheap good, but it's really bad for you generally. Why is there so much pork there? Is that
Pork is cheap.
Yeah, and
pork is cheap.
Is there a lot of pigs running around there too? Wild hogs.
Yeah, there's wild boars there. A lot of people hunt for boar, but the pig that we eat is typically farmed.
Yeah.
But that's like one of the cheapest meat sources that you can find, anywhere.
Yeah.
And of course, influence with culture. We have tons of different, ethnic backgrounds in Hawaii, and everyone brings in their influence, and tons of Filipinos, tons of Chinese, tons of Japanese. Everyone likes pork.
Yeah.
Everyone uses pork. And yeah.
So into that with maybe spirituality a little bit. I feel like a lot of those like Asian cultures almost have this enlightenment of Buddha or Hindu or things like that. Do you feel like maybe that ties into the people living longer, that it's maybe more of a living in the now, staying present kind of atmosphere, I guess?
It could be. You find ways, because people have this idea that Hawaii is this super laid back, super casual place, but in reality, it's difficult to live there. It's very difficult to succeed there. You know, you have extremely high cost of living, and you have really, you know, it's really hard to earn your wages there, very low minimum wage. So with that being said, you know, you just, I don't know, you find ways to simplify your life and, you know, cut out a lot of the bullshit, really.
Yeah.
And maybe that has something to do with it. You know, you learn how to relax a little bit and forget about the world.
You're forced to, in a way.
Yeah.
You're also separated from it, maybe. You feel like you're far away from it, but...
Yeah. We'll see how that statistic, you know, pans out over time.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was growing up, you know, 20, 30 years ago, it's like we were way behind in terms of, you know, we're a part of the United States, but it felt like going back in time if you were to come from here and go there. Yeah. Nowadays, it's almost the opposite. It's like we're at the cutting edge because of tourism, and, you know, we try to market ourselves, so we bring in, you know, the very best.
Lots of money. And
so that's, lots of things are changing. It's not the same place. It's extremely competitive. It's hard to live there. It's expensive as hell. It's one of the reasons why I don't live there. You know, it's just too expensive.
That was the big push out.
That's one of them. We moved to be with my fiance's father after her mom passed away in Albuquerque. Okay. This was like 4 years ago, over 4 years ago now. And I was trying to do music back home in Hawaii. I was having the time of my life, actually. It was so fun. Yeah. But I thought maybe it would be good to get away too, and, you know, it would force me to grow. I knew it was going to force change. For sure. And because I felt like, you know, I was stuck on this little island with not much opportunity, and for personal growth I figured I'd go out and, you know, make myself a little uncomfortable. Yeah. And it did force growth, but not in the way that I expected it. So I mean, I'm extremely happy with the way that things turned out that way.
How everything panned out.
Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, kind of going back to that too with Hawaii, or we talk about a little bit or a lot actually about the things that you consume, even if you're not like so aware that you're consuming it, that it's affecting you in some way. So I also wonder, kind of going back to that question of being, maybe it's because they're always consuming, like, I mean, it's beautiful, right? I mean, I've never been there, but it's beautiful from all corners. Even if you're having a shitty day and you're living on the bare minimum, isn't it still, you're like looking out of a broken window to waves and some kind of like twilight and sexy people and Corona, tacos.
It gives that like being more in tune to
right.
nature.
It's like you don't have the light pollution, the sound. I mean, I imagine. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure as.
So, it's interesting. It's interesting because that's the idea that you would assume. You know, that's the image that you would initially think of if you'd never been there before. Yeah. But like I said, as wealth comes into the islands, as more wealth is brought into the islands, wealthy foreigners, they buy up all the prime real estate, and that's taken away. That's all the coastline. Anywhere near a nice beach is prime, and, you know, the local people, the people that have been there for a while, end up moving more and more inland into these, you know, really it's sad. There's some pretty, you know, impoverished areas in Hawaii. It's kind of shitty. It's kind of shitty. Scottsdale is like leaps and bounds ahead of. Sure. Yeah. When I visited Albuquerque, I was in like the northeastern heights, which is like the nice part, you know. I was like, oh my goodness, this is so beautiful. Right. And coming here is like another step. Like, oh, this is so nice. Yeah. But I guess I'm just used to it. But at the same time, you don't know any different if you grow up there. It's nice, especially if you're taking advantage of what the island has to offer, like, you know, the surf and the fishing and all that stuff which I grew up doing. So it was great for me. I didn't know that I was poor. Right. I had no idea. It was fantastic. Right. I loved my upbringing. You know, I loved being able to do what I was doing. So yeah, maybe that's a part of it. You know, I had these blinders on to how nice things could be, but it's that fruit of the knowledge of things, you know, that like once you expand your mind and once you realize that there's better, once you taste better, it's hard to go back. You know, so that's the thing. It's like you have to be aware of what you consume because you can never untaste something.
Right, exactly. Or
Metaphorically.
Yeah.
for sure. I don't know. Yeah.
It's like forcing yourself. You knew change was coming, and like you knew it was going to be uncomfortable. You knew it was going to be totally different, but that's the leap a lot of people don't take too. You know, you have to.
Yeah, well, I had a good girl, and you know, I wanted to be with her during that time, especially. It was a hard time for her, and I knew it would be good for me eventually, or I thought it would be good for me eventually. So I took the leap, and it wasn't the first time I did something like that. When I was, you know, a few years before that, I had just I'd signed up for I was trying to sign up for classes. I was changing my major again. I changed my major a bunch of times in college, and I couldn't get the classes that I needed because they fill up instantly, you know. So I couldn't get the classes. So I called my mom. I was like, "Hey, Mom, I'm not going to college anymore. I'm done."
Yeah.
And I decided to drop out there. And I was like, "What am I going to do?" And one of my best friends was graduating from Belmont University in Nashville, and he's like, "Come up and live with me. I'm gonna stay up there. I'm gonna try to do some music projects, and you know, we'll just hang out. I can get you a job with the lighting company that I work for." So I was like, "Let's do it." And I just moved to Nashville like on a whim.
Oh, nice. I didn't know you lived in Nashville.
Yeah, just for like 6 months. It was super quick,
Yeah.
and it was fun. It was cool.
Good experience.
Where'd you go from Nashville?
Nashville back to Hawaii for a few years, and then Albuquerque. Yeah.
What do you miss about it most, being there now in a landlocked state?
Hawaii?
Yeah.
I miss my family. That's the correct answer. Right? My friends, but surf is the thing. The ocean, I mean, I grew up in a family. Well, my dad he does like commercial diving, like what do you call it, spearfishing for
Oh, nice.
yeah, he makes money doing that now. He's actually medically retired. He injured his shoulder on the job in construction, but he like goes out and he catches like octopus and reef fish for a living, and it's
Nice.
yeah,
That's super rad.
that's what
That
he
is
does.
so rad,
Yeah.
dude. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, so I grew up doing that. You know, I was on the boat or on offshore diving with my dad, and I actually hated it when I was growing up.
Yeah.
Because it was work.
Because it's a chore. Yeah.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and I couldn't keep up.
Yeah.
And I had to keep up.
I hate not keeping up.
But yeah, that was something that I came into later in life, and I started to love when I was becoming an adult. Like spearfishing was like my life for a little while. Surfing was my life for a while. I went through these phases, but the ocean definitely was a big part of my life growing up, and yeah, I loved it, man. I missed that a lot.
I bet.
Especially watching those videos every day at work. It's like constant surf videos playing. It's like, I miss
I'm way
surfing.
better than that, dude.
Yeah, right.
Did you ever get like good enough to maybe take
Get
it
laid?
somewhere? Like,
No.
what'd you say?
Good enough to get laid.
No, I actually was into bodyboarding or boogie boarding heavily before I got seriously into surfing. And that I was actually pretty good at. And I was aspiring to compete and, you know, do that thing. But I started training and getting into my ego more than anything else. And my looks and my image. And I dropped all of my other hobbies for training and, you know, physical.
Physical appearance.
So what was we're kind of discovering ego a little bit. We talk about it. It's something that I've actually recently kind of realized that we all have an ego, whether it's, and I always kind of associated it with kind of that, you know, good looking, like well kept up, like jock kind of feel, but that's not the only side of ego. The ego is any side of however you want yourself to kind of be perceived, you know? So when did you discover that it was too much, that you're like, I'm falling into this trap of ego? And
so when I moved here about just over 2 years ago, I was going through a dark time then. Previous to that, I was training in Albuquerque for a living. My fiance and I were personal training. We were private contracting out of a small gym, and we train other people. she was training and competing in like the NPC and Muscle Mania and different organizations, and I was helping her to train. I was helping to build her programs, to build her meal plans and do that, and I do that for other people as well. And I was training on top of that myself, and I had all these aspirations and goals.
Yeah.
I was fully immersed and fully obsessed with training and my image. Really, I had this idea or this ideal that I was aspiring to attain, you know, in terms of image, and I was never good enough. And you find that a lot with people, you know, that are in the industry. Is they are, when you meet people that date, you know, bodybuilders or date physique competitors or bikini competitors, or, you know, they'll tell you that these people that look the best are the most insecure. And that's the thing, is because you're so hypercritical about every little thing. You're living in the mirror, you know, you're judging yourself, you're trying to find ways to improve. And that's like toxic. That's so bad.
You never get there in your view, like.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't good. Like the whole time I was doing it, I knew that it wasn't like the best thing for me, but it was addicting, you know? Improving anyway, even though it wasn't good enough, was addicting.
Yeah, you get that little reward. And it feels good.
And you definitely attract things to you, you know? When you start to change your image, especially, you attract a lot of attention, you know? And that just feeds it. That feeds the beast. When I got here, I was training. Previous to here, I was training like 6 days a week. I was in the gym for like 3 hours a day. I'd smoke some weed. I'd take my pre-workout. I'd go warm up and like roll out and stretch, and for about an hour. Then I'd train for 2 hours.
Crazy.
And then I'd have my meal prepped and I'd eat at the gym. And then, you know, that was every day except for one day I'd rest. And even on my rest days, I'd go to the gym and roll out and stretch and stuff.
Yeah.
So it was ridiculous, you know.
Right.
Coming here, like, things changed and I started to question everything. Like, there's more to the story, you know. I was having a rough time with my fiance at the time, and I was just kind of in a state of like where all these walls that I built up over the years started to crumble, you know. And I was reassessing everything and trying to be really honest with myself, and I realized what I was doing was leading me down this super dark path. You know, I was super depressed, tons of anxiety, just like, what am I doing?
Right.
You know, and then a couple weeks into getting the job at, you know, where we work now, some like Messianic Jew evangelist walks in the door and starts talking to me randomly. And like, you know, kind of, he prayed for me like in the restaurant in front of everyone.
Has anybody done that for you before? Like,
yeah, that's happened before throughout my life. Like,
he's beautiful. Look at him.
I know, he's gorgeous.
People pray to him all the time.
Gorgeous animal. I have an altar in my closet.
Hey Arnold style.
Yeah.
Sorry, we can't help ourselves.
Sometimes it's just.
So yeah, I don't know. That's happened before. You know, growing up, I grew up in like a Christian household, I guess. And you know, my dad tried the best he could, and he's actually well read in the Bible and all. But I fell off that, and so I grew up people like praying for you, you know, laying on of hands and they pray for you and stuff. But it never resonated for me. It wasn't real for me then.
Oh, I didn't realize this was so recent that you like found.
Yeah,
God.
It's been 2 years. 2
wow,
years,
that's
man.
crazy.
That's all.
Yeah.
And so yeah, this guy pretty much told me, he was talking about Hawaii and how beautiful it was, and he loves it, and he started talking about asking questions about my family.
How much money you make? $20 donation.
My social security number.
Yeah. And just like every glad American, you know, you give it up. You give
Coupons to sell to your neighbors, and that was it.
So he started praying over you.
Yeah. So I basically told him, he's like, oh, so what do you believe? And I told him, you know, honestly, I don't know what I believe. I actually feel really lost. And he like chuckled a little bit, and he's like, you know what? You're not as lost as you think. And he grabbed me by the shirt and like pulled me close, and he like.
I know where this ends.
I know where this is going.
He like put his hand on my head, and he was just praying for me in like the middle of the restaurant. People were looking at me, and it was weird. But
what did you do? Did you just
at the same time, I knew I needed something. You know, I needed something to pull me out of the dark place that I was in.
Okay.
Because I was telling my fiance at the time, like, man, like I was telling her that I hate her, that I wanted to go home, like, but I knew at the same time, anything that I do, everything that I could do wouldn't satisfy me. I knew going home wasn't the answer. I knew it.
Right.
You know, it wasn't her. So like I was like, what am I gonna do? If nothing I can do is gonna fix this problem, what am I gonna do?
Mm-hmm.
Where am I gonna be? Like I can't be anywhere.
Right.
Be happy, you know. So after that moment, his wife, it's weird. She looks way older than he is, right? And he said she's a prophetess or something, and he asked for like a message from God from her.
Yeah.
And she basically told me that I will be like a messenger for God, you know, which I listened to, but it didn't really sink in with me at all. And that night I got home and I told my fiance, I was like, you know what, things are going to change. Somebody prayed for me, and I'm going to start reading the Bible, and we're not going to sleep together anymore. And from that moment, like I felt like God like cleaved me from her, like we were separate. And you know, it was crazy how things began to change at that moment. I started reading. I downloaded an app. I read, you know, I was listening to the audio book of the Bible and reading at the same time, and I went through the whole thing within, you know, a short amount of time. And yeah, my life changed like super quick.
That's crazy, man.
And dramatically. So it was cool. It was a cool change, and it's continuing to change and develop. And what that lady said, you know, it's like, I am almost being, you know, I am a messenger for God, but in a different way. In the work environment, you know, that's what I talk about. You can attest to
dude,
that.
we have conversations all the time.
But the Bible's not what you think it is. That's what's fascinating to me. Like, a lot of people will criticize it, you know, but what they're doing is they're not criticizing the Bible itself. A lot of the time, they're criticizing the people that wield it.
Yeah.
And when I read the Bible, like it's far out.
Yeah.
It's far out.
It's like a sci-fi.
Yeah, it's really far out. And I was telling Pete, if you believe the Bible to be true, you believe some far out things.
Yeah.
And that's what led me to almost become a conspiracy theorist.
Right.
In a lot of aspects.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what's crazy for me too. If you can't even, like, it's like talking to somebody, like, I don't have a problem with any kind of religion because I'm completely open. If you're close with something, like, that's beautiful. It's a great relationship to have, you know, to a higher power, or if you find an answer or lightness to somewhere. But when you're talking to somebody, you're like, this seems pretty far out, and they're like, no. You're like, you're going to, it's like, it starts so like like a combat right away when it's that's not even what it's meant to be. I'm just like, just realize it's kind of crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But doesn't, I mean, go from there, you know, we're like, it doesn't change what the stories mean to you or what they could do or change people's lives, you know.
I think that's a big part of it, is realizing that these ideas are so foreign that they might strike people, you know. And the way you're supposed to approach things is, you know, it's with intelligence and it's with a gentleness, and it's seasoned with salt so people can take it, you know. And a lot of the time when you're getting evangelized, you know, it's not something that you want to hear.
Right.
And maybe that's not the method, you know, or maybe it is for some people, maybe it isn't for others.
You also just get into the thing with numbers, and you have so many people, so many different groups, you know, you have people that are ripping off people. You do have how do you, I mean, it's not the same church, like, how do you react to things like, you know, pedophilia in the Catholic Church? I mean,
I thought you weren't gonna talk to me about that.
I told you in the contract.
Subjects.
I'm just joking. No, I mean, that's the thing. Okay, so if you read the Bible, it's one thing, but a lot of Christians, I wouldn't consider them Christians.
Right.
I wouldn't
100%.
consider what we observe as Christianity as Christianity. I would say it's churchianity. It's a culture.
Yeah.
It's what's become.
Wait, did you say it's a cult?
It's a cult, sure.
It's a cult, sure.
It's a cult, sure.
It's a cult, sure.
That's be a great shirt.
Dude, right?
Let's do it.
It's a culture.
That's a cool shirt too.
Yeah, that's actually marketable.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
Patent
I'm on
pending,
board.
People, patent pending.
I'm on board with that, because I mean, I think that's a message that needs to be out there. It's like, what you observe, you know, is not what's written. What's written is different, and even what's written is a compilation from, you know, the Catholic Church. You know,
It's the greatest hits.
yeah, like a long time ago. There are things that I believe to be scripture that are removed from scripture as well. So it's like it's interesting. At the same time, we have to remember that, you know, as Christians, we're fallible, and that's part of the message as well. Is that you need a savior, you know. So you're observing people when you're observing the church as well. You're observing people. You're not observing, you know, the word. That's something that's different.
Right.
You know, so yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know what's going on in the Catholic Church with all that stuff, but
Some kitty diddling.
that's some dark stuff.
I heard this, like, one thing I heard was it's changed over the years, because I think, I don't know, hundreds of years ago or whatever, like the priests could get married and they could fornicate and everything. But then over time, when they were, you know, made to be alone, I heard some, this is the theory, is there's some that would be gay that don't want to come out as gay because then they're going against their religion. So they become a priest or something with still these gay feelings or thoughts. And then it's like,
That's interesting.
yeah. And I was like, I never heard that before. And I was like, maybe that is
Because
true.
they took away,
Because, you know, it's like, why is it so often that, you know, the pedophiles do work at Chuck E. Cheese or a school? It's like, obviously, because you're going to, you know, try to be around it in some shape or form. Obviously, it's not the case all the time.
Yeah.
But there probably are a couple that are like, oh, you know what, I figured out the system or how I can kind of like snake my way through it. I don't know.
Dude, that's creepy. That's creepy.
dark.
I don't know. It's weird. There's a lot of, you know.
Yeah, there's a lot of problems with all of the religions. I mean, or people that are the bad seeds, and it's, you know, defaming them or defacing the topic, being like that. It's the culture, you know. It's like,
Yeah.
you have to be.
And I think that's almost the biblical message of the New Testament. Actually, it's like Jesus came, or
Nice.
you know, as I refer to him, his Aramaic name, or his like Hebrew name, his Aramean name is Yeshua, and that's what they called him at the time. So that's what I feel like we should call him. You know, it's what people called him then, and what he called himself, Yeshua. He came.
I don't like it.
To basically,
You're throwing them off here. Shut up, man.
he basically came to like denounce the religion of the time, which was, you know, the Jews, and he was a Jew.
Mm-hmm.
He came to tell them that, you know, they're forgetting about what's important, and they're following the traditions of man, and they're not following the law of God.
Yeah.
You know, so a lot of Christians nowadays say that, you know, the law of God, the Torah, is done. It's gone. It's done away with. Jesus came and he abolished the law. You know, he fulfilled it, so we don't have to do it anymore. But he said himself, not a jot or a tittle is going to, you know, it's going to change until heaven and earth pass away. You know, so he didn't come to change the law. He came to bring it back to what it was. Because there were laws and ordinances that were built around the law that were circumnavigating it almost. And basically, you know, it just became people following traditions of man for their own self-righteousness.
Right.
You know, and he came to denounce that. So it's funny that like you have that happening again in like, you know, other parts of Christianity where, you know, you follow certain laws or ordinances that aren't part of the law of God, but that are traditions of men. Mm-hmm. You know, even like you want to talk about holidays. Holidays are like Christmas. That's a pagan holiday.
Right. There's a lot of similarities in both of those, right?
Yeah, that's a pagan holiday that was Christianized.
Yeah.
And according to the Bible, you're not supposed to do that.
And there's the whole red and white thing too, and Satan, Santa,
Yule trees and Yule logs, and dude, even Easter, like, you know, like the whole fertility thing, like there are roots to these things, you know, and maybe people like blow it out of proportion with connections, and they start, you know, making things out to be facts when they aren't, but
that's
like,
what we do.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Cento, stone hard facts.
Yeah. Always.
But I think like you need to look into this stuff, and especially if you call yourself a Christian and you're celebrating holidays when the Bible has other holidays that are commanded, you know, to be observed, but you're celebrating these other days, you should probably look into the roots of those days and check it out.
It's not so true with just how culture works. It's either cherry picking the headline or learning and then just talking about it like freely, not looking into things further. That goes with religion, it goes with politics, it goes with literally everything.
Yeah.
And I think
for sure.
And now we get information so quickly, we are also triggered so quickly too that we're like so fast to run our mouths or.
Absolutely, and that's the thing. We live in a culture and a society where information is extremely accessible, but so is misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be able to discern.
Fake news.
Yeah, you have to be able to discern, what is truth in this muddy water, because the water is like extremely muddy.
Thick.
It's thick. It's dank.
Yeah.
It's dirty.
It's real dirty.
So if you're gonna glean some truth out of it, like, you have to be well versed. You have to have a broad base of knowledge and then depth in a specific field at the same time.
But people won't do it because they won't take the time to, like, they'll just read the headline, then that article, like, what, they're gonna look up another article to see if this one is true or not. And that is kind of bullshit in the way that we do have to do that. It sucks. It's very unfortunate. Like, you can look at some of these big, news networks and everything,
Right.
and we can consume this article and be misinformed. And that's also unfortunate.
Well, money will do that though, right?
Yeah. Oh,
That's clickbait, man. And
that's all it is.
And that's what the news media, that's what it's become. It's like they want to get the ratings, and they want they want to feed people what they want to hear.
Yeah.
It's just getting worse. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's I read it was the founder of the WhatsApp or whatever, and he, like, Facebook bought them for, I don't know, $2 billion or something. So he was like on the board, then he quit and he turned down like $850 million because, like, he wasn't into how they were kind of progressing. And a big part of that was because I don't know, where was I going with this? What were we talking about?
Stone hard fact.
Damn it, Jesus OG. What were we talking about? Fuck, I don't know. What were we talking about?
Chicago Bears.
The Chicago Bears.
No, what were we talking about? God damn it, we're the worst podcast.
I know, we really are. News.
Misinformation.
We're talking about misinformation. Yeah.
I don't know.
How you have to look shit up.
We're talking about how, like,
after you read the headline.
Executives will take an idea because it doesn't fit the narrative.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Okay, so he has this quote, and he's like, I stepped down $850 million. People think I'm crazy, but the thing is, he's like, I don't disrespect them as a business. Like, they are a business. Like, they're doing well. Like, he's like, I don't disagree with them in that way. I disagree with them in the forms of how they're shifting culture and society. So it's like, I understand that there's news networks or journal, like, they need the clickbait.
Yeah.
That's the only ways they're getting advertising money and fill the fat heads up top and, like, line their pockets. So they're going to keep on doing that. And the cool thing is, it's also with how much information is out there. There is also people like him that can do something like that, then have a platform where they can be like, hey, like, kind of shed light on things.
Yeah.
And people can consume it or not consume it. I think slowly we are all kind of coming a little more aware to it.
Yeah, man, it's hard. It's cool when you have someone in that position, to do the right thing, because so many times you're gonna have someone who is so consumed by their own greed that they just want to perpetuate it and they don't worry about the implications of what they're doing.
Greed or ego too. That could all be ego. Being the richest. Because at whatever point, the people at top. Do you need these trillions or billions, and, like, now their whole line of kids and family and, like, they're secure. They have this thing with, like, the New World Order and those secret societies, Skull and Bones, everything, where it's like they reach this unattainable number because at whatever point, like, their whole family forever, like, that's the whole thing, is trying to stay alive, right? It's like the people are so afraid of death, and, like, they want to be remembered.
Carry this name, or
which is kind of like,
or at some point, we're going to be finding out a way to stay immortal,
right.
If you have the money.
For sure.
For
sure. They already have the things where they, like,
clone your body,
clone or freeze your, I don't know.
Yeah,
stuff.
Man, the implications of modern science though are kind of scary, and pharmaceuticals. That's like extremely scary.
Yeah, let's get into it. What scares you the most?
Is this? You have to let me know if this is a stone hard fact or not. and your viewers.
Oh,
We're asking Noki?
we are complete experts in
Right.
whatever we're talking about.
I've heard recently that nurses and physicians, even people in the medical industry, have some of the lowest life expectancy. Do you know that to be?
Why is that?
I don't know. I don't know if it is.
Is
if
it like the
is
cop
true.
statistic too? Like they're just prone to more stress, more long hours. Those, I mean, that shit's not good.
You gotta
for
be
your health.
unhappy too, in some sense. Like,
Yeah, for
you're
sure.
surrounded by death and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not even sure if that's like a real statistic.
Jesse's hard,
Right.
stone cold facts.
Right.
No, that is interesting.
Yeah, that's something to definitely look up. I mean,
Well, if you're not taking care of your body, like at all, working these long hours, getting 4 hours of sleep, that shit's not good for you. You're not eating properly. You're always like, oh, I'm grabbing a hot dog because there's a patient in room 3 that
Right.
you have to do something, or I
Yeah,
can see that.
it could be two ways. It could be. I mean, it could be multiple. Multiple things. But
Just to.
you could go to the point where it's because they're self-sacrificing, because they work these long hours, and
See the
they're
good in it.
they're not they're not taking care of themselves for the betterment of others. But then there's the other side that says maybe science doesn't have the answers that we're looking for.
Or-
Maybe we're creating more of a problem than we're solving.
And getting into that, I think a big part of that is because we're so slow on change and things that we learn, or we hear things from scientists, but then we have a political agenda against it to kind of prohibit it from moving at kind of the pace it should go at. For like example in that is I've heard the insane hours that they work. Why are doctors and people that are in high stress situations working in these insane hours?
Yeah.
Or like the people, for example, they get on these crazy sleeping schedules. Like, so if you're gonna get better, if you're gonna heal, one of the biggest things of that is sleeping and getting a good amount of sleep and resting. But you're getting woken up every 2 hours. You're waking up at 5 o'clock, getting your blood drawn. Like it's also sporadic because of how they schedule everything. That, I mean, the whole health system obviously is. I mean, we can't even talk about how to actually fix all of it because there's so many loopholes and problems with it.
Yeah.
But that is definitely a big. I mean, they say like you don't want to go to a hospital if you're getting sick because chances are you're not going to come out. You're going to get either sicker or.
Yeah, I haven't been to the doctor in a while. I mean,
That's
Sounds
not good
good,
enough.
though.
Yeah, I know. I think I should get hospitals and doctors I feel like are,
Yeah.
different things. Like, make sure everything's working. My butthole is
Yeah.
nice and tight.
Yeah, it's not leaky.
It's not leaky.
Never want that.
Yeah. But the blood, I would like to get my blood work done just
Yeah.
to kind of see.
That's what I
and
do.
kinda
Dude.
help
Once
you.
like every 6 months, just
Yeah.
get your blood work done, check your levels, and then that you base like your diet off of that afterwards. Like, oh, this was high, or I can bring this level down, like sugar or
Menudo.
yeah, menudo, of course, because the menudo like comes out in your lab results. It has like its own category.
Is this an intestine?
Yeah. So you have tried it?
oh man.
But yeah, with how, and that's the crazy thing too, with how fast, I think you hit on like how fast technology and science and everything's changing, or like the things that we're learning, and how all of a sudden it will kind of just, it will change us so quickly without really realizing. Or the cloning, it's like oh cool, they
It's gonna
clone
come at
somebody.
us out of
But then all of a
nowhere.
sudden we're like, even if it's 15 years from now, like we'll clone a human in 15 years. No?
Right.
I don't know.
I mean,
But it's fucking close.
That's
dude.
20
It's in our
years.
lifetime. In our lifetime.
and like 20 years seems like a long time, but I mean, I'm 30 now, and that seemed like it fucking happened pretty quickly. I remember when the sheep or whatever the first thing was 12 years ago, and hearing that and being like, that's pretty crazy. They cloned a sheep or lamb or whatever it was,
Yeah.
Then,
But wasn't it like didn't it take like 30 tries?
Oh,
to
yeah, that's
actually
right, yeah,
Possibly
exactly,
like, clone them correctly?
so that, I mean, but just things like that, or how fast, cloning our bodies and then, growing lungs or different, like all these things that are gonna help us live longer or make us more like alien in a way. But also our population is rising so high that like we don't need, like, so something needs to balance
Right.
out one or.
Well, I mean, what's gonna give though? Like, what are the implications of these modern advancements in technology and health and in science? It's like, I think we live with a lot of hubris with the idea that we've cured so many diseases, especially with pharmaceuticals, because what about all the all the micro changes that are happening within a body when you take a chemical.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what about all the things that you didn't catch?
Right.
Because granted, there are things that are happening when you're altering something in your body.
For sure.
You're stopping a symptom, but what are you creating in the long run? You know, in the short term, in the long term, we've done, you know, enough study to be able to, you know, okay, let's use this drug on the public. Let's make some money.
Yeah.
But what's actually happening?
Like-
What's actually happening? I mean, yeah, in the past 100 years, our life expectancy has gone up.
Yeah.
You know, but what about before that? Like, what about way before that? Especially when you talk about, like, Pete and I talk about biblical ages.
Shit.
Like, in the beginning, you know, life expectancy was way longer.
It's like fucking 700 years, man.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
they were
like
fucking killing it.
900 something years.
Yeah.
You know, in the beginning, that was.
And they were giants. I bet you anything, they were giants, man.
Oh, dude.
You wanna
Nice
go-
segue, Pete.
But yeah, we can live longer, but the quality of life is, you know, is it better? You know, even if you get that radiation after cancer, and then you have 5 years after that where you're like walking around with a machine on, or you know, Adderall
Yeah.
scares the shit out of me, like because of how many kids are doing that now. Or
Dude.
you know, you see the antidepressants. I've been on some before, but then you see that tie in with shootings, and you're like, okay, is this is it an effect of that or what?
Yeah, side effect.
And it's a whole thing where there's not it's not a one size fits all, you know.
Yeah.
And antidepressants are great for some people. Anti-anxiety is great for some people, you know. But it's like it's too hard to like everybody's gonna react so differently to everything. But we really just blanket everything so generically, and we're like, well, just take it, you'll feel better. And then who really knows?
For sure.
Oh, well, it helps him. You know?
Yeah.
He feels so much better, so you fucking
Right.
take it.
Yeah.
In terms of anxiety and depression, on a personal level, I'm thankful that I had it. You know, I'm thankful for the pain that I experienced, because those were indicators for me that something needed to give.
Right.
You know, that I needed to change my life. If it wasn't for that, what's the reason to change?
For sure.
You know, so I think that's the case for a lot of people with, you know, anxiety and depression. I'm not saying all, but you know, maybe it's a strong indicator that something needs to change in your life.
Yeah.
And if you're going to take something to suppress that, what are you doing? You know, you're turning off all the indicators telling you to make your life better.
Right.
So you're actually killing yourself. So,
But the problem is your parents, your doctor, your therapist giving you these things. They're, you know, we're not given the correct tools to deal with depression or deal with anxiety because we're not really.
What are the correct tools? Like,
I mean, I think for me, it's, you know, talking about it, being like, I understand that you're sad, and the truth is that you're gonna be sad sometimes, you know, and you're gonna feel like everything is worthless, but be real with the people, not try to disguise like that's not right. Why do you feel that way? I'm always feeling great, you know, like every day is beautiful. It's like, no, it is, and you can realize that. But like I've even talked to you this last couple episodes, like I've had this low level kind of because I have a pretty severe depression problem. But now I realize when I'm in those funks that like you can also exist knowing that it's just a feeling, it's a fleeting feeling, and it's something that you learn from and can kind of grow from. You know what I mean?
that's strong. That idea that, you know, feelings are fleeting. That's a strong idea. It's something to carry, because if you can understand that about your depression and your anxiety, and you can ride it through, then you also have to understand the flip side in terms of understanding your joy and your ecstasy.
Right.
It's like these things are fleeting, right? So stop trying to attain what's short term.
Yeah.
And Jordan Peterson talks about that a lot. It's like, do what's meaningful, not what's expedient. You know?
Exactly.
So, yeah, and that's a good thing about, you know, dipping down into the lows again, because I have days when I'm not feeling good.
Right.
And you know, and they don't happen nearly as often, but I definitely do have those days.
Yeah.
But I'm thankful for those days too, because they're a reality check.
For sure.
You know,
kind of
It's
keep
like-
you in check. Yeah.
for sure, because you know that's like a concept in the Bible too, like in the New Testament, where the Apostle Paul's talking about how he was given a thorn, and it's like something was happening to keep him down on earth, because he'd been given this revelation, you know. And once you're given something, given a revelation, or you know, given anything that causes you to feel a superiority, you know, fantastic to get the flip side and the same at the same time, something that's humbling and keeps you down on earth. And I think that's part of it. That's part of life, man.
Yeah, and that's the problem, is that we don't teach people this. I don't think enough, because it's so much easier to throw your kid down in front of an iPad because they have attention. Like the kid, it's like, obviously, because they're playing on a screen, then they're watching a show, then you're like eating out with, like, you're not communicating, and it's that's what scares me about just the future of people. I think, because we're all getting so busy and we're not realizing all these things that are slipping through the cracks. And I actually watched that, like, Won't You Be My Neighbor? Have you guys seen that?
I haven't seen it, but I want.
And I wasn't a huge Mr. Rogers fan when I was a kid, because I think it wasn't as bubbly and like
entertaining.
Entertaining,
It wasn't
exactly.
the Teletubbies.
Right. Well, different eras.
It wasn't as sensually exciting.
Not like colors, like, and he did it on purpose, actually, like because he wanted to, and this is the big thing of him, like, he wanted to teach kids, have these conversations with kids of the things that they're not learning in school. Like, if their dog dies, this is a real thing. Let's make it this episode about your pet dying and how to, like, change that. Like, they made a video with him after 9/11 happened, to be like, you need to address and, like, that's crazy. And it's just like that, and it is his weird positivity of looking at things and trying to teach you the real lesson. And it was beautiful, man. Like, I cried like 4 or 5 different times.
I know I'm gonna cry during that movie, and I definitely want to see it.
Yeah, I want to see it too. Actually, I haven't heard much about it.
It kind of reminded me of, I'm sure it was based off of it, but the show Kidding.
Yeah,
and you were talking about, like, he's essentially but he's losing his.
Yeah, I didn't realize actually how much they were ripping that off.
Yeah,
because after I watched that, I did watch last week's Kidding, and I just kind of like kind of lost it for me in a weird way, because something that Mr. Rogers, Mr. Fred, was like, he didn't like when people kind of, like, made an exaggerated version of him, or even comical, because he really wanted to be taken serious. He wasn't just a kids show. He was a kids show to inform. It was educational. It was he got PBS like $20 million when they were going to close down. So he was doing things for a purpose. So he didn't like to be projected in that way. And they even showed a short clip of Jim Carrey, like, making fun of him on Saturday Night Live, and I was like, that's kind of a funny karmic, like, twist to think, like, 20 years later you're, like, this peaceful guy, like, acting like somebody that wouldn't do that before. But we all live and learn, Tim, so you can't.
For sure.
You're not the same person you were 37 years ago.
I was having a conversation with my future father-in-law this morning. We were talking about briefly about giants,
Okay.
but also about indoctrination versus education.
Okay.
And it's pretty cool. He brought up the idea that education is so expensive in terms of what do you call that? Going to college. It's so expensive that you're forced to stick on this very narrow path of education. You choose your classes wisely so you can get them done in the shortest amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So in that way, they narrow your education down so much. You don't have this breadth of education that we once had. You know? Because people were more exploratory when school was more affordable, but not anymore.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Not anymore. Yeah. People don't explore. People want to get their degree so they can pay their student loans off.
Yep.
Well, they say college is like, they think in like 20, 30 years, that whole system is basically like
done.
Can you see that happening?
I don't know, man. I could see it happening, but at the same time, I feel like there's such control and there's such indoctrination happening in the meantime that they're setting themselves up to perpetuate some kind of this machine that's been built.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I could see that happening because a lot of people are finding the value in education elsewhere. You know, there's so many online courses that you can do, self-learning suites. Jordan Peterson has his own, and there's a lot of ways to learn. So
he has this on school?
He has this little, they have this software to help you like I forget what it's called, like self-editing or something to help you improve your writing, especially because he feels like writing is a really powerful tool.
So I think like something like that is what people are thinking is going to happen
Yeah.
with education. It's like that
It's
self-education.
going viral.
And that's the whole like kind of the thing with like podcasts, and more people are like digesting these like 3-hour I mean, that fact that, you know, Jordan Peterson will like sell out like arenas or whatever. It's like, that's crazy, you know, people, and that's awesome that to see that shift in
People
culture.
have the
People
need,
be like, and that's something that for sure I felt like I was missing for a long time. I feel like I kind of had my brain on this like kind of dialed down a little bit to
Had
just
the
kind
blinders on, man.
yeah, I don't know if it was like blinders. I just felt like I was just existing the way that kind of like maybe like the conspiracy kind of way, but like the way that the government would want me or like would want me to be, just existing in the system, slipping through the stream,
Just indoctrinated completely.
Buying, consuming, going on Facebook, going, you know, just being a binary 1 or 0 to whatever the machine is that they're trying to facilitate. You know?
It's really cool to be able to see that now because, dude, I went to public school and then I went to a private high school. Fortunately enough, you know, Kamehameha schools back home, if you have Hawaiian blood, you know, they'll give you a good education and basically subsidize based on your need. So my parents paid very little for like a really good education for me. And then I went to college after that, you know, for like 5 years. But I don't know, like the agenda and the indoctrination that I got, I think almost exceeded the education I got because now that I'm able to look at other sources, you know, now that I can look at the other side, I feel like there's a lot of things that we're missing, and you have to be able to discern that, but kids can't, you know, especially if you're just shoved in there with a bunch of other kids, you're gonna swim along with the stream.
Right.
You know?
Well, it's the path of least resistance, and it's also, you know, it's hard to, and I think, you know, talking about depression or anything like that, I feel like it's hard to start questioning yourself, and that's the one thing with the ego that people don't want to do, and admit that they're wrong or admit that they fucked up, and talk about it rather, and like instead of talking about it, like holding it back and then building up a shield in some other way, you know, whether it being working on getting super yoked and being like, whatever, I'm beautiful, you know, you know, there's so many ways you can hide your insecurities or your own unwillingness for personal growth. And I think for me, it's just a big thing that just wasn't taught to us as kids. And one thing I think is interesting is I just read this article, which I didn't even know this was a thing, but like K through 12, there's like some states that have like outlawed it now, that they were like teaching yoga and stuff in school. And they got rid of it in some like super conservative states because they are a Christian based, you know, education, even though it's public school. And I think like that's really sad for me because as somebody who's, you know, dealt with religion and the struggle of not believing in something that I was force fed from being a kid, then feeling very lost for a long time. If I was shown these different tools, these different religions, you know, when I got into yoga, it wasn't for a spirituality thing at all. And it's funny to see, because my dad's even said shit like that, like where he's like, you can't do that because then you're going to fall into this like other dimension of thinking kind of. And honestly, I did, that has started happening, because I've started feeling connected with the universe in a different way than and something that I was really missing. And that's just how everybody connects to things differently. And, you know, everybody learns different way because one size doesn't fit all. One pill doesn't fix this. So you're taking that away from the kids in the school. Some tool that could have maybe saved just a few people because they're saying, no, so you know you don't believe this Christianity, so now you're burning in hell and whatever. Like, just don't even think about that. Like, don't even think about other things that could maybe work for you. That's sad, man.
It definitely is sad, dude.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good idea to have for a parent that, you know, you instill in your children, if you have a faith, that you instill reasons for your faith, not just out of pure fear.
Right.
It's like, you know, tell the child that, you know, this is why I believe what I believe, and you need to seek it out too.
Right.
You know, and just don't do this and this and this, like, and not give a reason why not to.
or
The
a blind
Catholic way.
faith. Yeah.
Yeah, there has to
You
be.
just had to suck his dick and you're
Yeah.
getting to heaven, boy.
You were set. Why would you do that?
Oh man.
I got stories
You're
for you,
signing up to
son.
be an altar boy next year too.
I'm getting a mansion in heaven, son. I'm telling you.
Goodness gracious, that's some twisted stuff. I don't even know. Oh man. I
It's
guess
fucked
there's.
up, bro. Like the documentation behind it.
What is the thing with like cults and all that? Like a lot of times where that they do end up, molesting the kids, sleeping with all the wives. What is that thing with
I don't
power?
know. I guess
and-
that's just like
Are you
there's
so-
a lot of darkness that's shrouded in light. I guess a lot of things that seem to be good are the things that aren't. They
Yeah.
appear to be good.
fucking spam,
Aren't.
dude.
Spam. One time we were like, my fiance and I were driving down the road and we were passing Talking Stick at the 101. It was nighttime and that thing is like flashy
yeah.
at night. It's beautiful,
Yeah, wait,
you know.
so, yeah.
And that's like a metaphor for anything, and anything that's attractive. You have to watch out. It's like things that are attractive in life. A lot of the time are the things that you should probably stay away from.
They're poisonous.
Why?
I don't know. You like I said
I'm just
before.
a kid. Why? Why? No, but why?
You can't unexperience, and you know that. Like once you experience something, you can't change that. You can't change that how it's gonna alter your mind and how you perceive things in the future. And being in the place that I am now, being in a place of repentance, like not living that life anymore, and understanding how it was harmful for me and how it brought me to dark places. Like I'm living with the consequences of my previous life and my sin.
Mm-hmm.
Like every day it's a struggle because I can't untaste the forbidden fruit. I know that it tastes good.
Yeah.
I'm always going to know that it tastes good. I'm not going to lie to myself. But at the same time, I know that like it's not good for me. It tastes good, but it's not good for me. And it's a metaphor with food.
Yeah.
A lot of things
For
that
sure.
taste fantastic are not good for you.
Yeah.
It's common knowledge, So I don't know. You just have to use discretion, I think, and that's hard in a place where we're barraged with all kinds of flashing lights.
Mm-hmm.
So
Sensory overload for sure. I mean, you have so many things that you can interact with. You have to really watch the way that you do choose to distract yourself, interact with, have the things around you. Because like you said, everything is shaping you in some way, shape, or form.
You can't be unshaped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard, dude. It's because we live in a society also that thinks that you can get away with things that are unseen.
And do we reward that kind of behavior?
We do. I
Right?
think in popular culture, especially, in a lot of the shows, like that's rewarded. Getting away with things that you're not supposed to do is something that's rewarded.
Yeah.
Living dangerously, I mean, that feeling that you get when you live dangerously, when you get away with something, sometimes now, because there's the guilt side of things where you regret.
Yeah.
But then there's other times when you do things that you shouldn't, and that regret turns into something else. It turns into this fuel, this almost like dangerous fire that like, man, I just got away with that. That's kind of exciting.
You get that?
I've gotten that before.
I wish I
Definitely.
got that. No, I'm just like stricken by, I feel guilty for everything that I do.
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm a piece of shit all the time. That's my inner monologue. It's like, hey, you're pretty shitty. Hey, you should. I'm like, I know, dude. Just
Yeah,
let me
I know.
live, man.
You shut up.
No, that happens too. That's like personality thing. You have like,
I see that though. I can understand like
yeah, like you
that sinister.
But you think that that fuel probably like that's why these people are at like the top of our government, the top of religions, or top of
Cults.
I mean, I think you have to have an ego, an unhealthy amount of ego in a way, right? Because
I
you're
think it causes you
perpetrating
to-
it so much.
Yeah, you rise above the general populace, and that's scary. That's the most addicting drug of all.
For sure.
I feel like, okay, when I was training, I would take, oftentimes I would joke with people, I would say, I don't like to train, I like to get high off my pre-workout and then go to the gym.
Yeah.
Like, it's not the training, I just like to get high off my pre-workout,
Yeah.
tons of caffeine and other stimulants, and then go to the gym.
That's yeah.
But
I
it
can
wasn't
see
that drug that was the most addicting. It was, exalting myself above others. And I always did it in a humble way. It's not like I carried this pride where I would put people down.
No, it just happens.
But
I mean, right?
the feeling, regardless of if I was expressing it or not, but the feeling of being superior, that's a dangerous drug. And I think lots of people are controlled by that.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think, Pedro?
Yeah,
What do I think? Yeah, I mean, look who's president.
It happens, dude. Yeah, it happens.
Yeah.
For sure.
Back to Hawaii. I don't know. This was a great transition. Did you ever go through any like natural disasters? After this one in Indonesia, this is what made me think of it. It was like, what, 900 people died? And that's out of the news like 2 days later, dude. That thing was crazy. Did you see that?
I did.
Like the waves were up to
briefly.
20 feet. Like 900 people just...
That was after the earthquake, right?
Damn, dude.
That's crazy. Yeah, I honestly haven't seen that. I don't see much. I don't have social media at all. Besides...
You mean we're not going to gain any followers?
Right.
God damn it.
Besides scrolling on YouTube, and that, at least with that, I get to select what I watch. I don't really have social media, but in terms of natural
Is there
disaster,
news on Netflix or
There
YouTube?
yeah, there's news,
Yeah, our
Oh, yeah,
podcast
like
is on
there.
there.
Oh, yeah.
It's news.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, natural disasters, no, not
No?
for me. I mean, I had like some hurricanes when I was growing up. Like Hurricane Iniki was like a bad one when I was growing up, but it didn't
Sounds
affect.
What was it called?
Iniki,
Iniki.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
dangerous.
right?
And Nikki wants to meet you in the parking lot.
Don't ever meet Iniki.
Oh, I'm
in the
calling
Like a
it-
giant sumo wrestler.
Nikki, you take my seat on the bus.
Like E-Honda. No, yeah, I remember my sisters like taking trash bags. I was like I must have been like, I don't even know, 4, 5 years old. My sisters were outside with like giant trash bags trying to fly with the wind, you know, like jumping into the
that's
wind.
cool. Yeah.
But yeah, nothing that I experienced that was tragedy at all back home.
Do you remember that one, like, was it a kid or something that did all those balloons to get carried up into the sky? Do you remember seeing that?
Like the helium balloon?
Yeah, it was helium balloons.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Was it a kid? I can't remember what it
It was
was.
tied to a lawn chair, wasn't it? Wasn't it like a
Yeah,
lawn chair or
exactly.
something like that?
Did he get off the ground?
Yeah, he
Yeah.
got off the ground.
Dude.
You didn't see that? Let me, I'm here, distracted for a second. This
Yeah.
is, this is
We're
so
gonna look it
good. Hot.
So, is there any like structures or like megalithic structures?
Pete trying to pull us back on track here.
No, I mean we're gonna get into that anyway, right?
Yeah. No, we've been
You
and I have been
discussing
talking
that,
about that quite a bit in at work recently.
Right.
It's like, it's funny because when I was reading the Bible, in the beginning is like in Genesis 6, it comes upon this part of text that basically says, the sons of God looked upon the daughters of men and they were desirable, and they came into them and they bore them giants. Which I was like, you know, how do you skip over that text when you read it? If you believe the Bible to be true, how do you just like, oh, there were giants, okay, next.
Yeah.
So like, I like started looking into giants.
Dude, it's a conspiracy. I listened to a podcast on this like 2 weeks
Yeah.
ago about giant human skeletons that they found.
Yeah,
Yeah, keep going though. It's
Um,
crazy. It's fucking crazy.
there was. Have you seen any of the news articles
Love it.
from like the New York Times?
Yeah, oh yeah.
The 1800s.
Yeah,
Are
it
those
was
fake,
like
are those-
1849 or something like that. Yeah.
Are those fake news articles? Do you know?
I don't know.
But there's a ton of news articles just from the Americas now, like North America in the 1800s, where they were calling them the mound builders because people would, you know, excavate these sites, these giant mounds or hills or other things, and they'd find remains of like extremely tall people, you know, and a lot of them were buried with like copper armor. They would have like multiple, like 6 fingers, you know, on a hand, or 6 toes.
Damn, I can feel that already.
But it's crazy, yeah. Like there's tons of New York Times articles
Yeah.
back then, you know, with this stuff. But you know, it's funny that no one ever really talks about it. So I looked into these things. Last week we were talking about Second Chronicles, or I don't know if it was Second Chronicles. It must have been First Chronicles in the Bible, where it starts with this genealogy. from Adam, and then it gets to this man named Seir, and the Seir was the father of the Horites, and this group of people were cave dwellers. And what was interesting is from Seir, I tried to look backwards and see who his mother and father were, and there's no like trace. So I looked it up online, I looked it in the Bible, like he doesn't have a beginning, you know, he kind of just pops in out of nowhere.
So
you have this one
story.
Genealogy of Adam with right? One genealogy with Adam and all these humans, and then you have this guy Seir, and then this one of the seed of Adam, basically Jacob and Edom marries into Seir, and it's weird because like I looked up Mount Seir nowadays, and it turns out that Seir is Petra, Jordan. Have you ever looked up Petra?
No, I don't know what that is.
So Petra, Jordan is this place where there are these like massive temples. Like one of them, they call it the Treasury. It's 2 times the height of the structures carved at Mount Rushmore, twice as high, and far more intricate and elaborate, carved into pure stone. And they're thousands of years old.
Is that where like the Black Cube or something is?
That's Mecca, Arabia. But I mean, this is all part of the Middle East. It's close by. All this stuff. But yeah, these kind of structures are all over the place.
So well designed. There's these
beautiful.
It's carved into this fucking mountain. He showed me a picture of it. I'll probably pull it. Yeah. And it's like got these columns, dude, and it looks like it's just fucking beautiful. And to think that it's twice the size of Rushmore and like.
I mean, all those old art. It's so crazy to think of all these.
But I mean, it takes it back to they were cave dwellers, right?
Yeah, and when I started looking into Genesis 6, after it said there were giants on the earth, and calls them a bunch of different names. The descendants are like the Rephaim, the Anakim, the Amim, like all these different cultures called them different names, right? And there were the descendants of these giants. I started looking into megalithic structures like Sacsayhuaman, Peru. It's Cusco, Peru. There's this place with like these stones that are like hundreds of tons, and they're like perfectly fit together like puzzle pieces. Some of these stones are like 12-sided now, like laser cut, and they're thousands of years old.
So what do you think? Like, have you come to any?
I mean, that's Petra, Jordan.
Oh, damn, that's crazy.
That's crazy. That's thousands of years old. Now, modern history will tell you that happened around the time of Jesus, right? Like 2,000 years ago. However, if you look into the Bible and during the time of Chronicles, and it talks about how Seir was the father of Horites, the cave dweller people, that apparently built these structures.
Yeah.
That's like 5,000 years ago.
Do you believe in aliens?
I don't know about aliens. I believe in beings that aren't human, that have been here, and if people want to call them aliens, then so
that have been here. Like you think people have been here.
So there are other books like the book of Enoch, for example. That book was Enoch was the 7th from Adam in the generation of Seth. So he was like the 7th generation from Adam, and apparently in one of the sections of the Bible it talks about how this person begot this person, they lived this many years, then he had this for sons, and he and then he begot this person. When it gets to Enoch, the 7th, it said Enoch was not, for God had taken him, which is interesting. It just kind of breaks it, and then it continues on. There's a whole book of Enoch that talks about his revelations and what he was like, what he experienced. And he talks about how the sons of God, or these fallen angels, descended upon Mount Hermon, one of these places, and they basically took the daughters of man and created these, giants, and then taught men these evil things, these ways that we weren't supposed to learn. And that's what caused this major corruption on the earth, which led to the flood, because like the earth was like crazy corrupt at this time. So I think that we've been visited by, these, what the Bible calls fallen angels, And I think some people maybe, see them as aliens and don't understand what they are, but that's what I tend to
It's a
believe.
blanket statement, I guess. Like an alien could be so many different things.
An extraterrestrial.
It's
something
Mexican.
Right?
Pedro said that too. If we're listening at home.
Did you say a new Mexican or a Mexican?
Mexican.
Dude, do you see? I mean, even these New Mexican
Mexican aliens. They're crazy.
their art and stuff, and their, what do you call them? Cachinas or something?
The dolls.
Yeah, they're like, their
You
ancient
like 'em?
mythology is weird, dude.
Yeah.
Like really weird. And these Indians talk about being visited too.
Yeah.
Like a lot of them do. And that's the thing about megaliths. They're everywhere. These structures are everywhere. Like talking about the pyramids, pyramids are all over the world, dude.
Right,
all over.
right.
And there's like Sardinia in Greece, tons of megaliths. Like we don't know how they built any of these
crazy.
things. Any of them.
Yeah.
We have no explanation for these. There's a lot of theories behind them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they point to technology that was lost.
That's what's crazy. And, we've talked about this before too, being like how we're going so digital now too, that like, honestly, like a supernova or something could happen and literally everything would get lost. Like it's completely possible that thousands of years ago, they were smarter or had better technology even than us, like things that we don't even understand. But
I think so. And that's the thing, is we live in this state of hubris thinking that we've come this far and we've lived this long and we're superior.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like,
But have we?
right.
I mean,
100 years ago.
who knows what's been lost?
Yeah.
Who knows what's been lost? But there's a lot of people that talk about fallen angel technology and these things that we've learned, and like we don't have a grasp on, how they built the pyramids or how they built any of these megaliths that survived, thousands of years.
Fucking giants, dude.
Maybe I was thinking that actually, like it was that does kind of make
Giants.
sense, but also I guess with all the different like
Phone?
creatures, it could be
Don't mind the porn on there.
out of after like all these natural disasters that have wiped out humanity almost completely. I mean, there's different kinds of humans everywhere, so
Yeah.
they all would evolve completely different,
Right.
Until we all started saying it was all right.
What are you looking up now?
Sacsayhuam in Peru.
The rocks.
Yeah, so check out these structures, dude. Like those
Yeah, that's
stones
crazy.
are fit together without mortar, and those aren't even the biggest stones there. Like they're
It's
fit
like
together
Game of
like
Thrones.
puzzle pieces, and they're quarried from miles and miles away,
Maybe they're just bored.
dude.
Thousands of years, nothing to do.
Right? Like,
Yeah, I'm living 700 years. And, well, I guess I'll build this fucking monument here.
yeah, but I mean these.
He
type
wrote
of-
his name out, with the rocks. Like nobody can see it.
This is never gonna be done. I know it's not for you, but your kids gonna love it.
right.
Yeah.
Oh, that kind of brings me back to
And we'll put like these pictures up on the IG so you guys can,
cool.
whoever's listening.
It's a good idea.
Dubai. I looked at a time lapse of Dubai over the past like 20 years. And dude, did you see how have you seen pictures of Dubai? How they built this island? It's in the shape of a palm tree. It's made out of sand. Huge.
I don't think so.
Like just ridiculous, massive.
Yeah.
Like that kind of stuff like almost rivals, like ancient architecture, because it's like they just built an island.
That's true,
Like,
right? Or
Right.
think about like
Yeah.
even the World Trade Centers are just these huge things. Like we're doing pretty crazy things too, I guess. I mean,
But watching the process and how they did that, it's like, okay, I can understand how they did it with their, billions of dollars. They spent like $2 billion doing this or something.
Good.
Quarrying stone, blowing it up, putting
Just
it on
make an
ships,
island.
bringing it. But then how do you explain like these like giant stones? That stuff like blows my mind. Like, what do you call it? Stonehenge even.
yeah.
You know? And the thing about giants is that there's mythology all over the world. Hawaiians have mythology about giants, so do New Zealanders.
But was there like in the pyramids? Was there pictures of giants though? There wasn't really. They're just creatures, right?
Ancient Egypt has tons of depictions of people that are super tall.
Oh, do they?
They
Yeah.
do. And what modern teachers want to say, historians want to say about it is that it's an illusion for they exalted these certain kings or their ancestors. It's like it's them. What do you call it? Just exalting their image, by making them so large.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Like their
You know
ego
what I mean?
or whatever kind of. I mean, that was they built tombs for them, pyramids for just a person.
Yeah,
dying,
but
right?
no, if you look at there's Egyptians, like some of them are super small, and then there's ones that are like 5 times as tall.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and that's everywhere, dude. Greece. I mean, everyone knows about like Greece and the giants in Greece and the Cyclops, and how
Greek mythology.
Yeah, Greek
is
mythology
depicted everywhere.
Yeah, they're basically demigods. They're gods that mixed with people, basically, and and they were half human, half God, and they worshiped them, and that's basically what I was listening to I think it was in Mexico. There's mythology about how they used to worship they'd go underground to these caves where they found remains of these rotting giants, and the people would, in like the 1500s, and the people would worship them and bring human sacrifices down to these things, but they were already dead.
Yeah.
Right? But according to their mythology, these giants came down on Earth, and there was a being that came down from the sky and smited them all with lightning. And this is like
The giants.
yeah, and this is like Mexican mythology, and it's funny how they kind
they're
of
crazy.
all link up.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, yeah, it's all a similar story.
Very similar,
Yeah.
very similar. Like there's giants everywhere, and when you look at ancient mythology, there's links throughout the world.
So sometimes it's like that question though: does art inspire, literature, or does art inspire life, or does life inspire art?
Yeah.
Too. So it's like I think about that. Then I also think about hunter and gatherers consuming everything they can find. So how fucked up were some of these people sometimes? Like eating mushrooms, eating certain berries, eating ayahuasca root. There's MDMA's made out of bark too.
Right.
You're trying to create things out of everything, whether you're boiling it in water to make a soup, or if you're just cooking the shit over on the fire, or just eating it. I imagine it, and I do also imagine that if you did find that kind of thing, they're like, ooh.
Let's dip into this again next week, guys.
I mean, I don't know. I kind of feel like that would probably shift.
Right.
I think it's probably somewhere in the Bibles and old things, or or somebody hears something, then they kind of start seeing that. It's
Yeah.
like with Jacob, we talked about when he was talking about DMT and how people kind of live through the same thing. But is there like a seed planted in your ear, or is there some kind of connection that we're flowing through? I don't know.
Yeah, but that prompts the idea of mind and body. Like I was listening to some people talking about last night, lecturing about dualism versus monism and the separation of the body and the mind. And there's with the body you have all this physical stuff that happens, but with the mind it's something that's completely immaterial. And
What's it? Sorry, dualism and monoism.
I think it's monism.
So
monism.
what are those two things?
It's like the idea, dualism is the idea that the mind and the body are two separate entities.
Okay.
And then monism is basically saying that the mind and the body are one, that the mind is just the extrapolation, or it's the computation of what the body is.
Okay.
It's the same thing, they're
Yeah.
one. But, I think in my understanding, in the Christian understanding, they're two different things. The mind and the body are two different things.
Interesting.
The mind, or if you want to call it the soul, the soul lives on, and the body, the body dies. Now, in the Christian worldview, the body is going to be resurrected as well. It's not just the mind. It's like you're going to have a physical body too, but perfected. So.
Oh, is that the idea? You come back as the best? I've always had this question. I never got really an answer.
Well, it's after death, though. It's like in heaven, you get this best body, right? Or the best.
Well, even that idea, the idea of heaven isn't really something that's, I think, explained correctly. It's something that I don't really have a good grasp on either. But
we have the great grasp on it.
right, stone cold.
Stone.
No, it's funny because prophecy in the Bible tells you that there's going to be an era of the kingdom when Jesus returns and he reigns for 1,000 years on earth. And then after those 1,000 years, the world that we know it is going to burn, and it's going to pass away, and the heaven and the earth is going to change. And then there's like an everlasting new heaven and new earth, basically, something that's reformed.
2.0.
Yeah. So like
Simulation 2.0.
so
Yeah.
heaven is a place where like God lives in like this
I thought it was heaven is a place on earth.
right right and it's a place where, you know, the stars and everything. That's another conspiracy, like flat earth, you know.
Yeah.
It's like,
shit.
yeah, but in the Jewish or ancient Hebrew worldview of things, it's like almost like we live in a snow globe.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, because in Genesis it says that the waters were divided from the waters, and then within that bubble, you know, there is a firmament placed. The firmament is like this, basically, if you want to call it, like a glass ceiling that creates, you know, the heavens, and within that firmament is the stars, the sun, the moon, and, you know, it's very different from like what we know to be space nowadays.
Right.
It's very different.
That's flat Earth obviously is a ridiculous theory, but it is interesting if you do think about that in the terms of you saying space could be so much different than, you know, the perception of it, or what is space. Like, we don't really have straight answers either. And as you can see through anything else in life, if you do a little more research, you're getting two different answers. Or
Yeah.
did we ever go to the moon, or you know things like that. I don't know. You take their word for it.
Who knows? This is what Pete and I were talking about. If they can make you believe a lie that big, as big as either flat Earth,
Yeah.
or as big as faking a moon landing,
Right.
automatically, it creates this separation of intellect. You trust that the government is far superior than you,
Right.
and they know way more.
Yeah.
So you're willing to listen to them if you trust that they could achieve the impossible.
Right. Right.
And now, if they haven't, what does that mean?
Right. Exactly. It's
Do you still trust them?
right. It's like, do
Yeah.
you put blind faith and think that they can do these crazy elaborate things?
Yeah.
And it's like, you look at it and you're like, probably not. But I think that's the puppeteer thing of like the secret societies run deeper than, you know, the public heads. So like those are basically just the...
Also, anymore, like, I feel it happened with the fucking giant articles from the New York Times. Like, people see this shit and they know it's there. And even, like, if they come out like, oh, we faked the moon landing or whatever, people would be like, oh, I knew that, you know, or like, I told you for years. And it's like, this just creates more...
Like when Trump released the JFK documents too. I mean, like there was things in there that people were like, wait a second. They were like they even said that there was like a false flag in Cuba, that they were gonna attack it to show that they were being attacked, just so they could start that war. But they luckily didn't have to get. But like there's been documents.
Right.
There's like and presidents have been like, yeah, there's aliens or something kind of weird, but we're just like, well.
That's the thing, is like there's so much mud in the water, you just don't know what to believe anymore. So it's easy just to believe what you're fed.
Let's pull these curtains back, folks.
Or just to stare at your phone or whatever, just to be just to distract you. Like, oh, it doesn't affect me or doesn't.
It doesn't. But what I was telling Pete is it does.
Right.
It does affect
Because
you,
that's
but you
part
don't
of
know.
your life. Yeah. I mean,
That's exactly. That's the whole. And I'm learning this a lot too. And this is a great like life learning lesson of, you know, you keep yourself in check and you think about what you are consuming at all times and how you're making yourself a better person and how you're learning. And I think that kind of energy attracts other people in that same wavelength. And it also maybe starts kind of like deflecting that negative. I don't know. I think change can start really small, you know, like it can be one little thing, you know, it is dealing with those days where you're more depressed, but then realizing, oh, this is a feeling and it's fleeting, but let's, you know, frame our mind a little bit different.
Right.
Let's react with the reality in a different way, you know.
That's why your highs are so high and your lows are so low.
Right, exactly. And the mediums are so medium.
Yeah.
Extra medium.
Extra medium.
Nah,
So
medium
I
rare.
like my steak extra medium.
Medio raro.
What about, like, I'll go back to the JFK shooting, I guess. Like, do you think he was assassinated by, was it Orwell?
Honestly, I'm not educated enough on that subject to even begin to.
Do you know anything
understand.
about that? That's a
Not
crazy
much, dude. But
conspiracy.
I mean, I think, like you said, the paperwork's out there. It's what we choose to consume. Like it's what we choose to believe, and is it the path of least resistance, believing the government, you know, because it doesn't affect us, air quotes?
Yeah.
Or is like, do you delve into that? Do you pursue it? And even if you're, you know, I mean, there's people that do obviously pursue these things, but there's no revolution or, you know, there's no uprising and like, hey, you know what? That's not right. And you shouldn't be doing that. You shouldn't be lying to the people like that.
Not yet.
Well, not yet.
I think we are getting
I think
there.
we're getting.
That's the whole thing with like, I mean, yeah, look at Weinstein, look at Hollywood, those dark corners of that, and you know, and even with, you know, the government, that's happening too. And there's a lot of conspiracy, because I listen to a couple of conspiracy podcasts just because I like hearing different sides. Like I think most is pretty fucking ridiculous, but they're like, that shit's gonna keep on happening. Like you're gonna, like, they're waiting.
When are we?
They're waiting for that week up. They're waiting for that to like, and to start throwing the, you know, try to shatter the glass ceiling or whatever to try to shake things up.
Where does that come from? Shatter the glass ceiling. That idea.
I don't know. That's a.
I think that's connected to like the firmament idea.
It could be.
You know why? Because okay, in the 40s, right? There was this guy named Admiral Byrd. And he did some like discovery some expeditions down in Antarctica. Operation High Jump was one. And he basically said that there's large areas of warm land down there, as big as like the United States.
Really?
Yeah. And like highly decorated, you know.
Yeah.
Admiral Byrd. And they started doing this operation called soon after Operation Fishbowl, where they were launching these rockets into the air like super high and like exploding them, and like no one really knew what these things were, but a lot of people talk about how they were trying to hit the firmament basically.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. So like they were saying like he found like the edge or the close to the edge of the world.
Yeah.
And he's trying to like flat earthers talk about this stuff.
That's like their big like.
Yeah, because they believe that Antarctica basically surrounds the Earth.
Okay.
Because it's the only protected territory, you know, in the world that no one can explore.
We're all trying though, isn't everybody kind of lined up around it? The parameters to be like just waiting for somebody to make that first move to kind of like.
I don't know. Like that's like the longest lasting international treaty ever. It's like all these nations came together and decided that no one can go there.
Wow.
You basically have
weird.
to have like. You have to have.
Oh shit! I think I'm a flat earther.
Right. Right. You basically can't explore it without, you know, being granted access.
By who? Government?
Even Dora.
Yeah.
She was in
Dora the Explorer
yeah,
can't even go there?
They wanted to make an episode and they're like,
No, bitch.
oh,
First of all, let me check your papers, Dora.
Is it? Yeah.
And bring Diego over here, because we know that motherfucker's...
What is it? HASA? What is that? Like that? Have you heard of like those theories of the weather controlling, like the weaponized HARP? That's
HARP.
What, yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't heard much. No.
I think it's like, aren't there like...
They try to shoot
currents?
off waves. Yeah, the currents with the
currents.
moon and outer space to try to like
create
storms. Super storms.
So like hurricanes, or like even NASA's making fucking clouds. You know, they artificially make clouds that.
I said clowns. I was like, that's fucking crazy.
Yeah,
that's crazy. They're making clowns.
God damn it, NASA!
With their billions and billions, they could make some scary
killer clowns. Yeah.
But they work like a fucking cloud. You know, they consume the water and they rain, and it's like these man-made little things controlling Mother Nature.
NASA, man.
I don't think we should fuck with that.
Weapons scare that's one futuristic thing that scares the shit out of me too. Because like think about all the shootings and shit that we have now. There's a lot of things that are being created kind of under our nose, or you read an article about, oh, that's crazy that you can do that.
Right.
And then we don't see it, but then, you know, like
weaponized drones.
I mean, that's
thing.
one thing. It's like, you know, people are like, oh, we're gonna die by robots. It's like, yeah, in other countries, people are dying by robots. But like, you take that farther with like sound. How, like, you've heard of these devices where you become paralyzed, or it can even stop your heart because it's just like a frequency that is fed through your ears, and like
I've heard
you
about
can't
that
move,
too.
like, and there's
Like paralyzes you.
yeah, and they like are like gonna use that at like, you know, certain gatherings of people to try to like break up like low level hums, and then you can escalate it to be like, I don't know, man, stuff like that is gonna get
like we went
crazy.
to Scottsdale Quarter to get I got a new yoga mat today,
Uh-huh.
and Rachel's like, it even smells good out here, and I was like, they're pumping it in the air, you know, like they're controlling this.
It's
Dude.
the whole
They're
Vegas thing.
Pheromones.
so they want you to feel good, and you know.
It's
oh,
true,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
mean, like, you're in the dressing room, they change the lighting, so then you look, the mirrors are contorted
Yeah.
certain ways, so you look better, like, and that's the whole, go back to the thing, the business is doing a good job, like,
Yeah.
good
Yes,
job.
true. Yeah.
But,
good job, business.
You know,
But
it's your job as a consumer to try to be, I don't know,
Yeah.
real.
Discerning.
Concerning, yeah, exactly.
The thing is, yeah, the money is the root of all kinds of evil, and understanding that, you know, look where the money is, NASA,
Yeah, NASA.
right?
We're on to you.
Yeah, take a look.
Yeah, what are they getting for that funding with like space? Isn't it like 60 billion, 120 billion dollars, something like that?
I don't know.
it's for the Space Force, right?
Yeah, no, it
Yeah.
is. It's like an absurd amount of money that we're
Wow.
spending on it. It's crazy.
It's ridiculous.
But the one thing I heard about
We
that,
should use that to go to the moon again.
well, the one thing that is good about Space Force, whatever, it's protecting our satellites. Because if there was ever a war, if somebody was to knock out a
dude,
satellite,
our grid system,
we would
we're
be
done.
so fucked. And there's something, I think
Maybe that's happened with the
they've seen
Egyptians.
Russia doing that a couple times at the bottom of the ocean, because like our Ethernet cable basically runs at the bottom of the ocean too. They've seen like submarines kind of like, because that is true. Like, I mean, that would be, I mean,
Detrimental.
if everything just went black. I mean, we
all
would
they
just,
have to do is screw up GPS, right? Global positioning, and then
pretty much, dude. And then we don't know where missiles are coming from. Other, you know. It's crazy, dude.
Yeah,
It's the
scary.
future of weapons and war, and what we know as war is also kind of scary, because you know a lot of it can just happen online through, you know, people robbing banks. Even, I mean, that's kind of the bank robber, I guess. I never thought about that. I'm gonna make like a high action like theft movie with it, just a guy that robs banks on the computer.
Just a hacker. Whoop. Wired that into my
Cracking
account.
Red Bulls is
Yeah.
ordering pizza. The most action-packed bank heist since Inside Job. Denzel Washington returns.
That'd be a good one.
I like it.
I like the choice of actor there.
Well, I mean,
Denzel.
Inside Job was a
It's-
great.
yeah.
Is it Inside Job? I love that. I love bank robbery movies.
Was it an inside job?
Was it Inside Job? Yeah. I don't know, man. Conspiracies.
Yeah, I don't know. And
So
it's
for
like,
me,
like I said, if they were to tell us, like, we're at a place where we're like, oh shit, you know, it's not really gonna like matter. Like,
Well, so
it's-
maybe that's the controlled opposition. Is it's throwing so much you know, smoke and confetti into the air that we don't know how, because
Yeah.
you know the thing is, now that we're getting smarter, the government's like, oh shit, we need to switch things up a little
Yeah.
bit. Let's force feed the media. Let's separate the sides. Let's, you know,
Yeah.
fight about things that we shouldn't be fighting about anymore.
And that's the thing. Like, I was looking at some things on Giants last night because I knew we talked a little about it.
Uh-huh.
But there's this video about this guy pretty much saying that there are these news sources, like these fake, crappy news sources that are, you know, pretty much shooting off all this fake news.
Right.
Russian troll farms.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. That's also what's crazy. Like, that's a thing.
That is a thing. Like,
it's
that's
a job in
legitimately a
China. It's a
thing.
job in Russia. People go there, create websites,
Yeah.
accounts. Like,
It makes it difficult when the water is that muddy, though.
Yeah.
It does, because you're like, oh, that's all bullshit. But it might not all be bullshit.
Right.
Like, you have to really look into it. You know,
As a
it's hard.
consumer living in today's society, it is fucking difficult to pick and choose what you. I mean, that's why. I mean, yoga really does that for me. Like, I just fucking disassociate.
Separate.
I reanalyze. I check myself. Like,
I wanted to talk to you about that. When you were talking about yoga, earlier you said that your dad used to tell you that it was
oh, like he was like anti-yoga, like meditation.
Be careful,
so it's
because
like,
it's
yeah, you're gonna
it's
get
connected to the, you know,
the evil. I mean, because it's not Catholic. It's not
connected
that
to
God. It's
the
a different-
metaphysical, though, the
Right.
immaterial, right?
Right.
But it's funny because you said it's kind of true, though, because you started getting
Exactly.
into
No.
that.
Right.
So in a sense, he was right.
Yeah, but it is in a positive way. So it's like the fear is that I question his religion,
Uh-huh.
and then all of a sudden, if I think he's wrong, then is he wrong?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think that's
Yeah.
the big thing with the religion. It's like I need to believe this because like I'm, you know, it's that like maybe I'm afraid. You know, I don't know. It's
I think yoga and its metaphysical properties, I think they are inseparable. That's the reason why I don't do it.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there is,
Right.
like all the poses, are basically, they're based on something. That's worship,
Yeah.
that's how they did it, and it's the perpetuation of that
Lucifer's
worship.
sex position is what yoga was called at first, and they had to change the name. 'cause
Yeah.
it's like,
It's like, come on,
Lucifer's dance classes?
guys.
Yoga?
Yeah. Cycling class.
Yeah.
CrossFit, taken.
Let's make it even more hellish and put you in a 140-degree room with some humidity in the air.
You like that?
We're calling it Bikram.
Because my first experience with yoga was the best.
Yeah.
It was awesome. Like it was
You're
so
being really sarcastic, aren't you?
No.
Oh, really?
It was essentially amazing because it was different. It was hot yoga.
Mm-hmm.
It was like black light, and like they had all this glow stuff. It smelled fantastic in there, and they were bumping like crazy like techno music, but it was like really good.
Yeah.
And I was stoned too. So
Yeah. Those go hand in hand too.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but so I mean,
I thought
it
you got
was
really sick.
I did get really sick. Like
after.
yeah.
No, he said it was really sick.
No, I think, no. He said you were like puking and shit after.
Yeah, I did it for like, I think a week, and then I got like super sick, feverish week, and like when I was shitting, like my shit turned like super pale gray.
Ooh.
Like my body wasn't
Like
producing
a dry
bile.
poop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like when a dog fucking shits white, it's like, oh, what's wrong with you? It's weird.
I've never seen that before.
You've never seen a white dog shit?
No.
only after it's been sun dried.
Yeah.
No, sometimes it comes out right.
Huh.
Man.
Back to like the news thing of so all these fake farms or factories, people making websites or putting things out there. And it goes back to the thing of like art imitating life or life imitating art. Is it like by these people putting this out there into the ether and being consumed? Is it putting something in our ears to start shifting society a certain way? To start, it's for a reaction. Like there's a
Absolutely.
point to it. So it's like
absolutely.
and-
why would they be doing it otherwise?
Like, why is there more shootings now than before? Is it because that's all you ever see, so it's normalized? So then when it's normalized, now the people that are, like, at the edge of just about to break, when they snap, they're like, I know exactly what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yeah.
something from the media? I mean, from media, I don't know.
I'm sure it is. I mean, that's the logical thing to think. I mean, these people aren't stupid.
Right.
Why would they be pouring money into doing it in the first place if it wasn't for their benefit,
Or it goes into, that goes into the Hollywood, the dark side of Hollywood. Does the Hollywood kind of get with the writers and people to be like, hey, we kind of start giving them this idea. Let's ease them into this idea. So
Alien, space, all this stuff. I mean,
Well, it's like
Right.
I was
That
watching
is.
American Horror Story, dude.
Yeah.
Remember I told you, I was like, dude, I saw the intro and I was like, I just felt disgusting after that. Like,
Yeah.
it made me feel weird. They show a dog and he's got a gas mask on, and I don't know. It's like these things that we're consuming that maybe Hollywood does get with them, and they're like, hey,
Yeah.
put this out there, slightly.
absolutely. I mean, watch where the money goes.
I mean, there's a huge thing with like hip hop, how the Illuminati runs hip hop. I don't know if I don't know. I'll preface any conspiracy we've talked about this,
Yeah.
or
MK
we'll
Ultra
talk
and
or MK Ultra and shit. But
Right.
I don't know anything about. I digest some stuff. I try to be informed and everything.
It's hard to discern.
And my only thing is, man, I just have an open mind. I'm just trying to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
So I will misspeak. I don't really fucking know what's happening, but I
Yeah.
think it's more important to at least seek it out rather
Yeah.
than just being like, oh yeah, fine. But
Absolutely.
so back with that, like the hip hop and Illuminati, is they go with they're always doing the triangle symbols, like covering the eye.
Mhm.
Is it?
Butterflies.
Are they doing that because it's cool though, or then also because they're like, hey, that's a part of the Illuminati, so like I want to look into that devil image and have that and sell it too. So there could be two sides of that.
I think it works together. Too.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's the thing too. It can also trick people into that and be like, that is kind of cool, or that is.
Yeah. But I think that the term is predictive programming.
Mhm.
It's like you feed the public these things that are going to happen, basically before they happen, in
Yeah.
a sense to
We get so desensitized.
to muddy the water, to desensitize, and to make it not so much of a shock when it does actually happen.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they've been doing it with space for a long time,
Mhm.
since the beginning. And have you seen the moon landing videos?
Right, and they even like half that they put out back then they've claimed are fake by now. Like, and you can tell too, and you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's as technology gets better, space gets so much better too. Like,
for sure,
CGI gets so much better.
Well, that's what's scary too. I mean, they could really.
Some of these movies you don't even fucking know what's real
or I mean,
like you have an idea, but it's like.
I think about like a hostage video or something. Like you could recreate that super easily to like install terror to like you don't know what's happening on the other side of the world because you only know what's put in front of you.
Right.
You know.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's
scary
scary, man.
Yeah.
Scary times.
Scary times ahead.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think the idea that nothing's changed, so it's not gonna change, is true. I think there may be a point where, I mean, if this shit ends up being fake, I think it'll explode.
Yeah.
I think it'll explode. I think once it catches on, you know, like if it's a lie that's that big, like say for example space. I don't know if we went to space or not.
Right.
I honestly don't know.
Yeah, I don't either.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
But I've seen the moon landing videos and I've looked into it, and there is some convincing argument on the side of conspiracy that says we did not go there.
Yeah.
You know, and even like in terms of the Orion project recently, they're talking about, oh, how are we going to get through the Van Allen radiation belts?
Yeah.
Didn't you figure that out when you went to the moon?
Right, exactly. And the
like,
scary.
why is that an obstacle?
And
like you went through it already.
Yeah.
And then you have people like Buzz Aldrin,
They're
like,
like,
oh, if we went through it, we didn't realize that we went through it and it wasn't a big deal. We didn't get radiated.
Changing their stories. Like, did you watch the video when they come back down to Earth and they're just kind of like.
The interview afterwards?
Yeah, they look like freaking zombies.
But I mean, they also came back from them. But I don't know. Who knows what way they can. But the scary part about that for me is when you start saying it's absolute truth, when there are a lot of questions to it, and then all of a sudden you're like, well, that you're wrong, you're dumb. This is, you're like, just because you're questioning it, just because you're like, hey man, I'm not trying to be anti-America. I'm not trying. And for me,
absolutely.
the biggest one that gets a shitload of hate too, and it's like I don't know who's responsible. Like, okay, 9/11, that was the first conspiracy for me that I ever really got into, just because I felt like there was a lot of crazy shit about it. And I still feel like there is. I'm not saying our government did it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that with any conspiracy. What I'm saying is that there's a lot of things that we're not paying attention to. A lot of things where the money's going, where it's being fueled to, where it's being peddled to. Of like, why does this name keep on popping up here?
Yeah.
Why does this guy keep on getting richer from like? There seems to be a lot of questions and a lot of things, but now it's been what is it, 17, 18 years or whatever it was. But now it's like you're demoralized. Like you look like you're the asshole. Or the people. I'm like I'm not, like I know a lot of people die. Like that's my whole thing. I'm like,
yeah, what they die for?
What did they die for? Who and who? I mean, what are the odds of finding the guy's ID, but they can't find the black box on the plane, the thing that's not supposed to be destroyed, but they can find just a driver's license. You know, like Building 7, Building 6. Like there's 2 buildings that collapsed or got stolen from that didn't have. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's. A lot of so I do listen to a lot of flat earth argumentation. I listen to a lot of it, and there's some people at the top that basically, not at the top, but there are some people that are very outspoken about it that say, if you believe the government narrative of 9/11 or the moon landings, don't even look into flat earth. Look into those 2 first.
Yeah.
And once you realize that the government's lying to you, then you can realize that they're willing to lie to you, and maybe on that scale too.
Right.
So look into other things first, and then come around, because even with the flat Earth narrative, like, man, I've looked into it, and they have strong argumentation about a lot of things. They do experiments, and that's the thing is like there's a lot of independent people and groups that come together to do experiments to test things like water surface level. Like they'll shoot videos or take telescopes and like beam them across miles and miles and miles of flat water.
Right,
and basically water always finds its level. So I mean, if there's a curve, it's gonna curve.
Right.
And after a certain amount, 8 inches per mile squared, like you're not supposed to be able to see things over the curve. It's impossible.
That's
but
crazy.
they bring things back into view far past the curve, extremely far past the curve.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to be way below the curve at that point. How do you see it? There was a news broadcast where this guy talks about, you're not supposed to be able to see this city here, but it's a mirage.
Yeah.
He's saying it's a mirage.
Right.
But like, Yeah, I don't think it's a mirage.
I don't know, man. It's just like, for me, even that theory, like, because I digested it. I thought about it, because I don't know, to be honest. I know what I'm told, and the truth of that is that I never have looked into it farther than just being like, yep, sure. So that, for me, that's almost kind of that's the crazy thing, is I've went 30 years of my life never being like, hey.
That's what everybody who believes it now will tell you too. Every single one who believes it,
know.
Like, you're an idiot. Why would you ever believe? That's how you start off.
Exactly.
It's far out, but
9/11 is the same thing.
Right? The fucking Bible's far out too.
Right? Is it as far out as we're flying through galaxy at whatever 600 million miles per hour, you know, rotating around the sun, you know, and we're all contained in, like how NASA illustrates us moving throughout, you know, the galaxies.
Yeah.
Is it as far out as that? You know?
Yeah, I mean, no, I don't think it is. It's not as far. Like, I mean, I like dipping into conspiracies and, you know, aliens and Bigfoot, and like, just because it's fun to push your brain into this other dimensions or other worlds that are existing. 'Cause I don't know, like, that's the thing when people say it's just crazy. It's like, it's crazy that fucking all three of us are here right now with headphones on talking about this shit in front of a computer that can record us into this thing that we're gonna have on our device. You know, it's everything is fucking insane. It's insane that we're here. You know,
like, it takes 3 generations to teach a lie. Like, that's, you know, your parents, grandparents, like your parents, and you, like, they've instilled, like, oh, we're a globe. You know, there's gravity. There's, you know. This is what we learned to the solar system to be, you know?
Yeah.
And it's crazy the fact that you're like, these 30 years is like, I've never questioned this before, you know?
Yeah, I mean, most people don't, because once you do, you're ostracized.
Exactly.
You're an idiot. You're
kicked out of the tribe.
But, I mean, Johnny Bro, what's his name?
Yeah, Eddie Bravo.
Eddie Bravo.
Johnny Bravo's different.
Hey. On Rogan, like, Eddie Bravo, I'll be like, you should look into it. You should look into it, and they, you know, they make fun of him for that.
Yeah.
I mean, look into it.
Right.
Like, that's the thing. Yeah. Look into it, and once you listen to enough argumentation, like, if it doesn't work with you, then discard it. Look for another, you know, argument. Maybe it'll strike something. Who knows? But yeah, look into it. That's all you can do.
One of my greatest, like, lessons of learning over the last year is putting yourself in learning from as many things as you can, regardless of if you think you're going to benefit from it or not. So if you look into flat earth and maybe you just learn this one little seed of something that all of a sudden kind of flickers a switch on this other thought, this other idea, then all of a sudden
so many more things.
Exactly. It opens up. Yeah, we're like, where maybe you don't think that's true, like, but then you hear this one thing that leads you down this other path, or it makes you better in this. It's just like constantly expanding yourself.
Exactly.
That's super interesting, because, you know, when I started this whole thing, it was because of the Bible. Mm-hmm. You know, I read Genesis 6 and it said there are giants, so I started looking into giants, and then from giants,
porn for a little bit.
People started talking about the moon landings, and then soon after, like, I kind of started looking into these same people talking about giants and the moon landings, talking about flat Earth and 9/11. Mm-hmm. You know, like, those are like the 4 that stuck with me. And if those things pan out to be true, it makes the Bible a lot more believable. Yeah. So it comes back to the Bible.
Right.
It's like, if we do live in what the Bible describes to be world,
then you're like, oh shit, that's
they're like, oh yeah, like, it comes full circle.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, like, it's crazy, dude. If you believe the Bible, you believe things that are far out.
Right. You have. I mean, you have to.
Yeah, and is that far out?
Is it far out? Yeah, or is it a simulation that's programmed in?
When are we gonna explode?
When are we gonna explode?
Yeah. Right?
Jacob's gonna be mad. We surpassed his time.
Oh yeah, we did.
He was so proud that he was like the longest podcast.
Was he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Dude, that was easy too, huh? That time just.
It's crazy,
real,
right?
Dude, we just get talking.
Yeah.
Do we want to keep anything else?
I don't know. Oh. I really have to pee. I don't know about you guys.
Don't you have your...
Yeah, pee into that.
I guess I could pee into my kombucha bottle, huh?
There we go.
Great.
You guys...
Have you ever drank your own pee before?
Accidentally.
Really?
Well, I was playing.
That's a weird accident.
I was playing.
Yeah, I was playing. All right.
We were doing a competition to see who could arch it.
And then you arched in your mouth?
Yeah, you arched in your mouth.
He arched into your mouth. Or you arched into your mouth?
I arched in my mouth.
Oh my goodness.
Have you?
Crazy.
Peed in my mouth?
I mean, tasted your own pee? Or
I haven't. No.
I mean, you've tasted pee. You've gone down on girls.
I guess that's true.
Come on,
There's
guys.
Particles.
He doesn't want to be a part of this podcast. I bring Jacob on because he was supposed to be here this week, but we talked to him. He's going to like his decomp thing from Burning Man, and then he's going to come back on after a couple weeks, I think. So that's the story with Jacoby.
It's funny because like you find that like people like Jacob, I find him so interesting because he has such outside perspective, right? He's experienced a psychedelic world that causes him to question things, you know, and to understand that there's a metaphysical side of things that's, you know, far exceeds, you know, our physicality, which is super cool to me. And I ask him all kinds of questions about things, but yeah, it's like if the world were to be far out on its own and we're actually living a lie, that would be just as like fascinating to most people, you know?
So how do you, like, I guess it's like with who you surround yourself with, the kind of people, but being, you know, a Christian or a devoted Christian, I don't know if this is true or not, but I remember like having to do some community service for getting caught with some marijuana, and I was doing it for this church, and I remember they were like reading this verse, and they're talking about how, you know, God chooses the people into the kingdom, and some people are born with a heart of stone, and everybody kind of looks at me like,
so that's the thing. So in churchianity, I'm going to call it, not Christianity, in modern, you know, the Christian church, as we observe it, in its broad sense, you almost get this feeling that like everyone is accepted, and if you choose God, like that's all you have to do is, you know, say that you believe in Jesus and you're saved.
Right.
But like belief is something that's completely different. In if you read the Bible narrative, you know, belief has more about what you do than what you say.
It's on you, like you.
Yeah, it's like it has to be real, and your actions, you know, show the fruit of what you actually believe. Like you can say that you believe that your parachute will open if you jump out of the airplane, but you know, if you jump out of the airplane and you don't pull the parachute cord, just saying that you believe that it's going to happen is not going to do anything. You have to pull that cord too. Right. You know, so that idea kind of goes along with actions. You know, yeah, like your actions will actually speak what you believe.
But if we all find, like, what if we do all find salvation different ways? Does that mean some of us are doomed because they don't adhere to certain...
So, yeah, if you look at the Bible narrative says that, you know, it's funny when it says, you know, God hardened Pharaoh's heart.
It gets me every time.
This guy...
No, it's interesting, you know, like God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Yeah. You know, it wasn't Pharaoh hardening his own heart, like God hardened Pharaoh's heart. And it also says like God is almost sovereign. So there is like this idea of free will, right? And if free will is the supreme ethic, you know, if the choice to love God or not is like the supreme ethic, then, I mean, if love is the supreme ethic, love, that you have to have free will to have love, right? And if God wants us to love him, he has to give us the free will to be able to do it. Okay. Right? So some of us can choose to love him, some of us can choose not to. And the consequences of us choosing not to causes evil, basically, and chaos and corruption. But at the same time, there is a sovereignty that's spoken about where God has control over what people do. Okay. You know, so it's like they work together in some way that I don't understand.
So I guess with free will, so everything doesn't happen for a reason?
Yeah, I mean, so the way I kind of look at it now is like when God, you know, started everything, created the world from the beginning, like at that moment, he already knew all the things that were going to happen. He knew all the choices that we were going to make, you know, and he knew that some of us would choose not to obey, and that would cause that corruption. But he let it happen, for his own pleasure. And that's the thing, is like, in the Bible narrative, it's about him. It's not about us.
Yeah, it's a masochist.
It's about like God. Yeah. I mean, like people talk about Old Testament masochism, like just, people getting wiped out and stuff like that in the Old Testament. That's true. But if you have like people like Seir who pop up in the Old Testament, who basically create the Canaanite, or to create the Amalekites, which are the arch enemies, who are mixed people, mixed seed, corrupted, isn't it the righteous thing to wipe them out if they're really evil, not human, like deity, or these things?
Who's to say?
I don't know. Yeah, I guess God's to say, if he is sovereign. And that's another idea, is like, even through trials, like Job, he was a righteous man and he was tested by God. Satan allowed, God to test Job. And Job says, like, with nothing I came into this world, and with nothing I'll leave. And then there's other ideas like...
My ex-girlfriend said that too.
It's like, what right does the vessel have to say to the potter, make me this way or make me that way? One's made for honorable use, one's made for dishonorable use. That's like the reality of things. In the Bible narrative, some people are made for destruction. Okay. That's harsh.
But he knows like the outcome of everything, but there is free will still, because so he already knows what you're gonna do, even though you feel like you have free will, but he knows.
He knew it from the strike. So that's what I'm saying. It's like there's this idea of sovereignty and free will that play together in a way that we don't really comprehend. Okay. That's how I see it. It's like, how can you have free will and have God's ultimate sovereignty work together? Because it seems like they cancel each other out. But maybe in another dimension, maybe they do work harmoniously. I don't know. Yeah. But that's a hard idea to struggle with.
For sure.
It's really hard. It's something that you battle with. Like, and that's the thing, is when you battle with that idea, you're like, maybe I'm that person that's doomed. Right. Maybe I was made for destruction. And that's scary. And the fear of God is something that's spoken of throughout the Bible narrative, and Christians don't hold that fear anymore. Right. There's no.
Yeah,
it's all about love.
That is true.
It's all about love.
They know they have that ticket. They already, like, without putting in the work. It's,
but if you fear God, that's a different thing.
And Churchianity.
The fear of God is beautiful in my perspective. It's like, I'm so thankful that I have a healthy fear of God now, because it keeps me in check. It keeps me in check. Definitely, because I know He's sovereign. So. Yeah, it's interesting how ideas that don't seem to work together in the Bible. Right. But it's a fascinating book. Like, it's crazy. And things that seem to contradict or don't make sense, I feel like you have to look into it even more. Right. Just look into it.
But then is it like drawing conclusions also? Isn't there a danger in doing that sometimes?
Absolutely. But the thing about the Bible is oftentimes it defines itself. After more study, you find out that, that's why that happened.
Oh, like circles back to it, essentially.
Yeah, so like in the story of Jacob and Esau, right? Jacob was the son of Isaac, right? Jacob was the father of Israel, the people. He had 12 sons. God named Jacob Israel later. He had a twin brother named Esau, who was actually the firstborn, right? So he was supposed to get the blessing and the birthright. But Jacob, the name of Jacob, is actually deceiver. That's what it means, right? Yeah. So Jacob stole his brother's birthright, basically, by tricking him, and then tricking his father at the same time. And God blesses Jacob, who was this deceiver. And in the womb, it says that the two struggled together. And it said God hated Esau, but he loved Jacob. And I struggled with that idea. Yeah. Like, why would God hate someone in the womb? I don't get it. Why would God love, Jacob in the womb? But if God knows what's going to happen, later on, reading into this, the genealogy, realizing that Esau, who's also known as Edom, which means hairy, red, rough, and ruddy, marries into Seir, this person who came from who knows where, whose name also means hairy and rough and ruddy, and he's a cave dweller. Some people link them to like Neanderthal.
Like in my porn.
Neanderthal. If he knew that he was going to marry into this wicked bloodline that's not supposed to be there, like, why wouldn't he hate him from the beginning if he knew that he was made for destruction anyway?
Interesting.
It's, I don't know, man. Like the ideas are far out, but you have to like really study with intent.
Yeah.
Like it's not passive. You can't read it in passing and just figure like try to understand it.
Oh, I get it now. Yeah.
Has every moment happened? Have we lived this moment already?
I don't think so.
No.
No, I don't think so.
So we have enough free will in that direct moment of like fate, I guess. Where
Yeah.
maybe there's a direct fate for us, but it's how we, I think, like what you're getting at is it's how we interact with what we're thrown.
Absolutely.
And how you choose to go. So like you have a determined path, you're on a path, you're a trajectory or whatever, you know.
Mm.
So now it's up to you.
Yeah.
Do you fall to the deceit of the beautiful, or do you, taste the fruit, or do you try to make yourself better and question what you're doing? And
Absolutely. Yeah, it works together in a weird way. It's like, it's a father with a child. Like, as a father, I mean, that your child's going to make all these mistakes, but you allow him to make it, hoping that, one day he turns from his mistakes and he follows the right path.
I think we're doing that less, right?
Yeah.
I think with the kids and people. My sister's a teacher, and she says that a lot. So the teachers come to her saying, "My kid didn't do this wrong. My kid's an angel," rather than being like, "My kid isn't studying." They are always on their phone, or they always,
accepting the blame.
Yeah,
It's like we can't do that anymore.
Exactly.
In the wisdom books in the Bible, it talks so much about raising a child and how like a father who coddles his child hates him, basically. A father who doesn't discipline his child hates him.
Mm-hmm.
Like that type of idea, and I think that's so true.
For sure.
Like,
Smack your kids.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's
Whack them good.
Whack them good. Get the
it's,
belt.
yeah, it's the same thing with the idea of God and like the idea that God chastises the ones that He loves.
Uh-huh.
It's like, yeah, if you are like a follower of God and you have to expect the hard times and the trials and the reproof and the correction.
Right.
Like it's gonna hurt because you're trying to strive to be better.
Yeah.
But that should be okay.
Or it's like I'm the victim. Like
Yeah.
I feel like this way, so understand why I fucked up. Or rather than just being hard, giving yourself the hard truths, man, be like, you're not doing enough. Are you actually trying to make yourself better? Are you trying to?
I was actually coming into the understanding of things. Like when I was saved, soon after I was saved, like I became really like cold and like really harsh to my fiance.
Mm-hmm.
And I started like nitpicking like everything that she was doing wrong. Like inadvertently too. Like I didn't even realize that I was doing that, but I like really like, caused her to like, I almost like shamed her in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And it cleaved us apart,
Mm-hmm.
But now she'll talk about how like it was harsh for that to happen, but at the same time it like she's almost happy that she got that too, because she never realized a lot of the things that she did.
Mm-hmm.
And that happens
Yeah.
a lot. Like I wasn't right in doing that in my method. I was harsh. I still do that.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still like, I'm screwing up all the time, but I'm learning as I go on.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, man, like as a parent, I'm learning if I want to be a parent who understands the balance of how to discipline my child and like, yeah, like letting them know when they're doing something wrong, because that's love.
Yeah.
Letting them like hurt themselves is not love,
I think a big issue probably with that is that so many people are having kids now that aren't necessarily ready for kids. Like if they're not in a healthy place, how are they going to raise somebody to be in a healthy environment? How are they going to teach them these things that they're not even practicing in their own lives? I mean, it's just ridiculous, So that just keeps on spreading and repeating, and that pattern is just growing and growing and growing.
And that's why, like, it's scary when you said earlier, like, the future, like, what are these people going to be like? What are these kids that are growing up in these? But I mean, I guess that's always been happening too. There's kids in hostile environments that don't get treated like.
Mm-hmm. And it's cool how like sometimes out of the most hostile environments, like someone is saved.
Yeah.
And someone turns around and like does like great things for the world.
Yeah.
So it's like it's independent of like of the circumstance sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't like
That's the free will thing. It's going back to because at the same point there's also people that are attacked as a kid end up doing that as they get older too. Like that percentage of that is unreal, which is crazy. Like if you get molested as your kid, like it's very likely to do that. It's just like that's crazy. Like if you've gone through this, it's why are you? I don't know.
Hashtag me too.
Yeah.
It's hard, man. Like, but at least nowadays, like, for me, like, I understand the fear of God is a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I was talking to one of our managers about this before, Brian, and talking about being with Bree. I was like, man, I'm so happy because, like, Scottsdale, everywhere, or all around the world, there's beautiful women everywhere, you know. And I'm so thankful that I have a healthy fear of God, because that keeps me in check in so many ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I'm not just sinning against my girlfriend. You know, ultimately I'm sinning against God.
Right.
And that's like even a higher standard, you know, for a true believer.
Yeah.
So I'm happy for that, because it does keep me in check, you know.
For sure.
But temptation never goes away.
No, it really doesn't.
It never goes away.
It's always alcoholic, or you always have depression. It's just how you choose to keep on maneuvering that. And that's, I guess the thing is, you know, with the population get like spiraling, like, you know, we're at almost 8 billion people, and I think
counting.
and counting like rapidly, you know, and I think that like scientists and stuff say it's like 2 billion or something is actually like the cap that we should be at. And that's the whole thing for the secret societies, the new world order. Like, are we breeding all these monsters and all these people that are just saying such ridiculous things that, you know, these mass killing offs, or these, you know, mass hurricanes or shootings, like they start losing the meaning because we start like not seeing humans as humans anymore. We just see them either as the other side or as a monster or somebody that's, you know, it's the, you know, back to those biblical things. It's just like, are we cutting off the gangrene or the, you know, it's like, are we getting rid of the problem too in a weird way? So it's like now the scary part of that is like if there is some kind of huge government conspiracy, you know, they're all building these bunkers everywhere, spending millions and millions of dollars. All the tech people like in New Zealand, they're buying these bunkers that are $150 million. Like, do you think there's a reason they're doing that? Do they know something that we don't know, or they just have so much fucking money that they're like,
might as well.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think they're living under their own anxieties at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like they're people too, you know, a lot of them. I think not a lot of the people in, you know, at the top are even in the loop of those that control the world. I think it's a very small amount of people.
Agreed.
If actually, and, you know, they're subject to a lot of, you know, the same insecurities that we feel. So if you have that much money, why not?
Yeah. And I mean, I would also think you're closer to some kind of top that you maybe are, you know, hearing things that we're not hearing. Because regardless of the conspiracy, the news, or anything, everybody can agree that we're withheld on certain amounts of information, whether it's for the security of America or for the better of our country or not. We're withheld things regardless.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I don't know, man. We live in a crazy world, crazy times. I want to see. I don't know if I have this quote still on here. I used to have these quotes.
We're known for that, actually.
Yeah. This is a quote by George MacDonald. This is isn't the one I was thinking of, but so it goes. To give truth to him who loves it not is to only give him more multiplied reasons for misinterpretation. You know?
Yeah.
So it's like if people don't want to hear the truth, like, and you're giving it to them, you're just kind of fueling their fire, because they're going to use it in ways to, like, you know, twist things up.
Right. They can use it however they want to manipulate it.
Yeah, but there's this other quote that talks about how, like, basically we're living in a time where we're educated into stupefaction, and, you know, like, it's like all this affluence that we're getting, you know, and this, it's like we're affluent, but we're not satisfied with the things we have. You know, we're exposed to all this erotica, and nothing is satisfying us in that way.
Right.
It's like, what is it coming to?
That's a scary thing too. Like talking about technology moving forward. I mean, and thinking about. I mean, we've talked about this before, even too, of like porn and how much it's changing in kind of, and even as we've done this in consumerism, I don't even watch porn anymore, because I realized that was like, I'm digesting things that are like not normal, harmful, and at a very, very quick speed. So you look at that and how bad porn is. think about sex robots. It's like, yeah, it's a robot right now. You're having sex with whatever. You know, it's like nobody's gonna do that. This is right now. Think about 20, 25 years where you are gonna get those same pleasure releases. Like that's very scary.
It is, and that's the thing about like pleasure, and the thing about porn is like, where's the limit? You know, where does it become unhealthy, and what can it lead to?
Right.
It's like, you know, going into like from where I was without limits to where I am now, limited for what I feel like is a good reason. I can't unexperience those things, dude.
Right.
Like I've watched porn before.
Yeah.
Like I can't get those images out of my head. That never goes away.
No.
And it is so crazy how much they're pushing it, because you know, like you have like these old Skinamax, HBO, where it's like you see a tit or you see them like having sex, but you don't see some of the sex organs, and like slowly start seeing more. Then there's more people all of a sudden. Like it's like, how the fuck did this happen all of a sudden? But it's so normalized.
Yeah.
Where does it go? Where does it stop?
Right.
You know, who knows? How are we going to be able to, you know, fulfill our fantasy later? You know, our children, how are they going to be able to fulfill their fantasies?
Right.
You know, how sick is it going to be?
It's going to get fucking really sick.
It's going to get really sick.
That's what I'm saying. It's like
Scary.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be the first time. You know, it wouldn't be the first time that kind of stuff happened. Talking about Christmas, okay?
Yeah.
It's like Christmas.
Quick segue there.
Right? In Rome, they practice what's called Saturnalia, right? The worship of Saturn, and that was at the winter solstice. Go peep it.
You didn't think this was going to be a good story? It's like perfect time to dip out. Greek shit, I hate it.
Oh yeah, I'm done. I'm over that.
Yeah, at the winter solstice. So, I mean, happened around December 25th, you know, every year. It was a day of lawlessness where all law was abolished.
Oh,
And
that's
they'd have, like,
that was a thing?
That's a thing,
So when
dude.
was that? How, like, what year does this predate to?
This is around the first and second century, probably AD.
Oh,
It's
that's
like this
crazy.
stuff was happening, right? And overnight, Rome becomes a Christian nation. But the people are submerged in this culture where on the December 25th, they can do whatever they want.
Yeah.
And they love it, you know? So, I mean, that's kind of the root of Christmas. Let's Christianize it so people can still celebrate, you know, It's not going to be what it was, but, you know.
That's what they say Christmas is, celebrating the...
Saturnalia, it goes around the same time, December 25th.
That's
winter
insane.
solstice.
It's like the first purge. Nothing is original in Hollywood. They stole it from the Greeks.
Dude, it's crazy, yeah. So they'd have, like, massive orgies in the street.
Well, the Greeks are freaks, right? I mean, and with, like, minors and stuff. I mean, that's the thing that's scary about even, you know, pedophilia, sex trafficking, thing that we don't talk about very often, but there seems not only from the church, but like, you know, supposedly there's secret rings, and the government, or, you know, ICE has been caught getting in trouble with illegally, like, trafficking people. Like, there's also Pizzagate. Ridiculous.
Dude.
But, and that's the problem with things like that. Then it's all of a sudden you're given misinformation, so now all of a sudden the whole thing's wiped out. Now you're fucking crazy because that.
Well, I think that loops back around to filling our fantasy, though. It's like that's the kind of stuff that can happen. It's like you want to push the limits of, you know, sex when sex is supposed to have its boundary.
That's what it is.
Like you start going into some creepy stuff.
Okay.
You know?
That makes sense.
Like, I mean, I can only speak from personal experience when like talking about like erotica, but it doesn't always start off hardcore.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
But it leads to it.
Jeez Louise.
Nice smooth entrance back.
What a great story.
We call him Mr. Smooth.
So yeah, I mean, it's weird, man. You can definitely, if pleasure isn't kept in check, you know, you can exceed it to the point where it becomes dark.
Any addiction,
anything.
And I think that's the problem with how our society works with the glamorization of like sexuality and stuff in a way too, where we flourish and we say like, you know, it's not looked at like heroin or alcohol or anything. It's just looked at as like, ooh.
Yeah, right.
Like
right.
feels
Quick
great,
release,
you know,
yeah.
like quick release or whatever. And like, oh, okay, close the laptop and back on with your day. And it's like,
Yeah.
It shouldn't be normal.
It shouldn't. And I think it's not. At the same time, like, I don't know, like I said before, I can only speak on my own experience. But even like having sex for the first time, that was like guilty. almost. I lived in guilt after that.
Yeah.
Like, and girls that I've spoken to too, it's like that's not a great experience for them the first time.
No, yeah, the first time wasn't good. I didn't feel guilt, but it wasn't.
Like it doesn't
As-
like it, but it leads to things, and
Right.
you have to have limits with things in your life. I think we all understand that in some way, shape, or form. And when you have no limits with things, like it leads to some crazy things. That's a metaphor with like food too. It's like
Yeah, oh yeah.
we know that.
Yeah.
Right? We know that with food, and that should be with any type of pleasure or addiction. You have to have discernment, understanding that they were built for certain reasons, and try to live within the constituents of that.
And I mean, we know that with food, but do we really? Especially as a country, I mean, we don't
care.
practice it. I
don't
mean,
care.
yeah, I
It's-
mean, you can
yeah.
drive down the street and there's 6 different cuisines of fast food that you can just pull up to a window
Right.
and get a burger with
Without
no
even
work,
getting out
no.
of your car.
Yeah, without. I mean,
So the roots of Christianity, and you look at Judaism. So my worldview now, when people ask me what religion are you, I almost don't know how to answer them because I wouldn't label myself as a Christian, because like Pete, you probably know, I follow like Jewish dietary laws basically.
Yeah, like
Hebrew.
I was gonna say this earlier. Like you say you're religious, but like it's almost like you said churchianity. You don't practice that a lot. I haven't really heard you say anything like, "Oh, I went to church the other day," and no, you like strictly eat biblically. Like you don't eat pork, you don't eat shrimp, and
Yeah.
like it's like almost a different, like an actual way of Christianity or
It's
how
because
it was supposed to be. in a
I
sense.
don't see a disconnect between the Old and the New Testament like most Christians do. Like if you tell a Christian that they can't eat bacon, dude,
right? Or
you're
yeah.
ostracized. They're like, no, you're a heathen. Like
Yeah.
you're following Old Testament law. That's
Right.
that's abolished. You're like
You're out
out.
the
You're
group.
not a Christian anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, but I don't think that that stuff was abolished. I think the law that was given to Moses is good instruction forever. I think it's still good instruction. So even in terms of eating, I understand that as a metaphor for my whole life. It's like things are given to us, and pleasure is given to us on this earth, but pleasure has to have its boundaries always. So that's even my view of eating too. It's the same.
It's kind of like the whole like us being shackled by language in a way though too. Like that's happening a lot with politics for me. Like I'm not on the right, I'm not on the left. I have different views about all the issues. I mean, it's a very complex thing. Is it an A or a B? No, it's crazy. But I think we're just so lazy that we want to label everything so that we properly understand it. So it's calling somebody a Christian just because they're like, oh, okay, I can write them off, or I know how to, label them as, I can put them in this bubble, then go on with my day, and not really pay attention to it. Rather than kind of going back to when you're talking about Jacob and, talking to him, I really enjoy having people that find enlightenment and things through different ways. If they're living their best life and they're finding some kind of salvation from, like, I want to learn about how they're receiving that too.
Right.
And I want to feel their positive energy,
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not, you can't be anti anything really, because there's value to everything in some degree of how you're going to look at it or how you're going to learn from it,
I think we have to be careful of understanding where to draw the line though, because there are boundaries with some things. I mean, we talk about pedophilia on here.
Right.
You know that's wrong.
Yeah.
Like everyone,
Yeah.
that's deemed normal knows that that's wrong. So you wouldn't condone that type of behavior or have someone that practices pedophilia on here.
Right.
So it's like there are lines. There are lines that are there, but where are they?
Right.
It's like, you have
Wasn't
to
there a
find
thing that people are like fighting for pedophilia to be a sexual orientation too?
That's crazy.
weird.
Which that's that's the whole conservative
That is,
thing of
yeah.
being afraid of the gay marriages, or I'm all about free love, do whatever you want, like don't hurt anybody else while you're doing it. And obviously there's laws that we have on ages that you shouldn't be breaking, but this is that slippery slope that they
Where
were afraid
are the
of.
lines?
And that's what I fucking hate about liberals. This is what I hate about conservatives. It's we go to this extreme from everything that all of a sudden it's like, and I really think it's some kind of controlled opposition where you get these super extremists of these groups to perpetrate the whole group to look like they're insane.
Yeah, it's identity politics. That's
Yeah.
what tribalism. That's what Jordan Peterson calls it, or Ben Shapiro. They talk about how people organize themselves into groups,
Right.
like that. But yeah, I mean, that's where discernment, individual discernment is the most powerful thing. It's searching for, those lines on your own, and you have to understand where they are, so because you can't control other people.
No, and that's the other thing. And don't live your life through anger through other people, And also, it kind of goes back to with, how do you interact with somebody that you're being hard on, or because you want them to get better, do better. Something I kind of struggle with a little bit as well, because when I start finding the light through things that I'm doing and I feel so much better, I'm very quick to pedal it out.
Yeah.
And how do I do that without being like over preachy, annoying, or like if somebody doesn't want to hear it? Because I think at some point too, you need to allow people the space to grow,
for sure,
and see if they will flourish, and that's not even with people, that's also like with emotions, depression, or give it the time, allow it to create environment, and then let it run its course.
Absolutely. Jesus didn't say to go out and shove this down, just give it to everyone. Like it's different. It's like you have to have your word seasoned with salt.
I like that too, by the way. I don't know where you.
Yeah, that's from the Bible.
Oh, okay.
I like that. And at the same time, it's like it's the one that I told you before. Don't cast your pearls before swine. Jesus said that too, right? If someone doesn't want truth, don't give it to them. That's doing more harm than good. So yeah, discernment is what it is.
Yeah, fine tuning.
Yeah, it's hard, not simple, but that's the narrow path. I think it's cool. It's something to strive for. That's wisdom in my perspective.
I think that's like living that simple, unquestioning, not trying to, it's not a life that's worth any value at the end of the day. I think if you're strolling through life with the blinders on or looking for the easy way, we create an environment where it's very easy to do that and just keep on rolling and not really questioning anything. But at some day, I think it will hit them and be like, if they haven't already started trying to make their life a little better, they do feel sorrow, regret, or something. And I think we see that a lot with older people. They're like, well, my 20s, I had the time of my life. Those were the good old days. It's like, motherfucker, every year could have been the good old days if you were living with that same intent and the same willingness to get better, to strive for more.
Right. And whatever your more is, it could be money, it could be, happiness. Like, I don't know. There's people, there's different forms of happiness for everybody, out there.
Well, it's what we value. I feel like we look at value.
It's close to you.
Yeah.
I think that's a problem though, is because you have conflicting value systems.
Bro, for sure.
And that's where when you get an overlap, when some person values this over this, there's conflict. So who's to say that this is more valuable than this? That's something that needs to be said.
The company is selling it to you, and that's the issue now. It's like, you want a happy life? Buy this. You want to do this? Like, look at this happy family running around. You need to buy this laundry detergent. Or like, there's commercials about things that aren't even about their product because they just know how to. I was thinking about this the other day of, like how many fucking Coca-Cola commercials do I see a day? Like, don't they make a lot of money? Like, do they need to advertise? They don't need to advertise, but they have the money to advertise because they know the more they put it in your brain, like I want a Coke for some reason, but you don't think beyond any layers.
You want a Coke with your name on it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what you want. You want a Coke with your name on it.
There's so many tricks inside, and it's like goes back to that WhatsApp guy with Facebook. He's like, they're running the company like a business. Like, I don't hate them for that.
It's the way it's manipulating.
But there's a lot of deceit in all advertisers and all consumers because it's it's the clickbaits, it's staring at this website, it's leaving this channel on for longer, it gives them more ratings. It's all back straight to following the money.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, when you talk about how we live in a society where you're able to be constantly stimulated to the point where you're just keeping the wheels turning and not really thinking about it.
Right.
At that point, it almost takes it from a dualistic idea where the mind and body become monos. It's like just one.
Yeah.
But the more that you stop and think about things that are meaningful, the more you realize, that your body and your mind are two different things, and you have to treat them that way.
Separately.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's interesting, man. Good stuff.
It is interesting.
Good talk, gentlemen.
Well, yeah, 2:22. I mean, that's.
I thought we were done at like 1:30.
I have to pee so bad. Dude.
I had to too, man.
But Hey man,
Say thank you.
that was fun.
Thanks for
That was
coming
good,
on.
yeah.
Good
We should have you back
conversation.
on again.
Sounds good. Yeah, that was fun. That went by super quick too.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Time for some beers now, right?
Well, who do you think you are is out there? We love you, man.
Who
And
do you think you
women.
are? Is that what we're calling him?
Yeah.
Who
sure.
do you think you are? I don't know. Try to find out.
Try to find
Right?
out, man.
Look into it.
Look into
Oh
it.
shit, that's a good. Hit that button.